Chapter 59. Sure enough, the female zombie was mad. She roared and followed them. At this time, Gu Chuan had already left the battlefield with Xiao Tong and Xiao Bao. Air Dai mixed in with a group of zombies and quietly approached the female zombie. When Yin Hanqing was infinitely close to the door and the female zombie was infinitely close to Yin Hanqing, a huge flower head suddenly drilled out of the ground. The position of the flower was very clever. The place where it drilled out was right under the female zombie's feet. Without saying anything, it opened its petals and swallowed the female zombie. The corrosive venom in the flower's petals immediately poured on the female zombie as if it didn't cost money. The female zombie was roaring because of the corrosion. Yin Hanqing turned his head and gave it a lightning, paralyzing the struggling female zombie. Xiaoqing didn't stay idle. After she finished with the female zombie, she controlled the man-eating flower to secrete digestive fluid. She also knew that the man-eating flower certainly couldn't digest the female zombie, but before it struggled out, half of its body's bones and flesh were completely destroyed, which was still possible. Feeling that the female zombie inside had begun to struggle violently, and when the man-eating flower couldn't hold on any longer, Xiaoqing controlled the man-eating flower to open its mouth and spit out the female zombie. The female zombie looked even more terrible now. Its body was covered with a strong corrosive liquid, and there was a burning smell accompanied by smoke. The clothes on the surface of its body were almost corroded, revealing the slightly rotten body underneath. At this moment, there were white bones everywhere. When it moved, pieces of flesh would fall down. At this time, the female zombie was in a state of madness. As soon as it was free, it roared and rushed to Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing waved the vine in her hand like a steel whip. The barbs on the vine all stood up, shining with a cold light. She didn't aim at the female zombie, but at the surrounding zombies who were attracted by the sound. She was very clear that if this whip hit the female zombie, it would at most make her lose a few pieces of flesh and break a bone. It wouldn't leave any fatal injuries. But if it hit the ordinary zombies, it would definitely result in several deaths. As Xiaoqing expected, the female zombie gave up on her and turned to the vine whip. It seemed that it was trying to destroy the vine whip of the students who wanted to hurt it. The female zombie was very fast. It successfully caught the vine whip a second before it fell on the zombies. Before it could destroy it, Air Dai suddenly jumped out from the group of zombies. It didn't care about the corrosive venom on its body and hugged the female zombie. The female zombie was obviously a little confused. Its limited intelligence didn't let it know what its student wanted to do, but its body reaction was to break free. But it couldn't, because the vine whip in its hand, it suddenly softened and wrapped around its body like a rope. At the same time, Air Dai's sharp nails pierced through the female zombie's eyes and directly into its brain. When it was screaming in pain, Air Dai had already grabbed its head and crushed it like half of a smashed watermelon. High-level zombies had strong recovery ability. As long as their heads were still there, they wouldn't die. Although low-level zombies didn't have recovery ability, they could still bite people when their bodies were broken into many pieces. But no matter high-level or low-level zombies, once their heads were crushed, they would really die. Xiaoqing couldn't help but sigh in relief, but her heart was unspeakably complicated. A zombie, full of obsession to protect its students, but what about human beings? Chapter 60. Xiaoqing felt that the reason why this zombie could evolve to level 4 at this time was not because of anything else, but because it had an obsession in its heart, and those obsessions were its students. The strong desire to protect was probably the driving force for it to evolve to level 4. Just like Xiaoqing, it was Little Bun who supported her, and now it was Air Dai and the others. Now Xiaoqing suddenly felt very lucky. Although she and her son had become neither human nor ghost, if that thing didn't happen, that scumbag might do something else in the future. It was very possible that he would work with the mistress to poison her and her son, and then help the mistress get promoted. Unfortunately, it was also fortunate. At least now she had seen through his character and could still live peacefully with her son, which was a great fortune in the midst of misfortune. Air Dai was holding the crystal. His cheeks were still stained with dirty blood, and there were corroded wounds on his body, but he happily ran over and handed the crystal to Xiaoqing. His pupils were very dark, but the color was very beautiful, especially when he looked at Xiaoqing with sparkling eyes. It always made Xiaoqing want to touch his hair. Xiaoqing finally couldn't hold back and rubbed Air Dye's hair, and then said softly, "Let's go see how Gu Panpan is doing. Let's leave this place first. There are too many zombies here. Who knows, maybe another level 4 or 5 zombie will jump out." Yin Hanqing went to see Gu Panpan. Gu Panpan was indeed a tough man, and when he came out, he was still very lively. After the group of people gathered, they left the school. Now almost everyone was injured. After returning to the car, Xiaoqing put the crystal in front of everyone. The level 4 zombie crystal was as big as a pigeon's egg. It looked like a piece of crystal, especially when the sun shined on it. The light it reflected was particularly gorgeous. It was hard to imagine that this was something taken out from the corpse of a walking corpse. Everyone knows that zombie crystal nuclei don't have any attributes, except for some special ones. In other words, this crystal can be absorbed by all of us here. Now we need to discuss how to distribute it. Xiaoqing said seriously. There was a saying, even blood brothers have to settle accounts clearly. They looked at each other, and Gu Panpan said first, "I think we should give it to Sister Qing. First, Sister Qing is the strongest among us. If we give this crystal to her, she will become stronger, and we will be safer when we go out for missions. Even in the base, she will have more say. Second, when we killed that zombie, Sister Qing contributed the most, so she should take it. Last but not least, I like Sister Qing. If I also have a share of this crystal, I am willing to give it to Sister Qing." Gu Chuan said lightly, "I second that." Gu Panpan immediately said with a wretched face, "Brother, which part do you second?" "I like Sister Qing." Gu Chuan turned his head expressionlessly. "What are you talking about? We are discussing something serious." The few of them still managed to see his slightly flushed earlobes and the side of his face. Gu Panpan hid to the side and snickered. Yin Hanqing and the others didn't even need to ask about their thoughts. Xiaoqing didn't pretend to be pretentious. She just took out all the crystals she got today and gave everyone a share. She didn't take a single one, only the level 4 one. "You guys are the ones who suffer losses. If we get something suitable for you in the future, I will give you back." "Okay." Gu Panpan put away his share. They all knew that if he didn't take it, Xiaoqing wouldn't take the level 4 one either. After dividing the loot, they returned to their respective cars. Those who needed to apply medicine did so, and those who needed to change their clothes changed their clothes. Then they packed up and continued to move forward. In fact, even if they went back to the base now, this trip's harvest was enough. But they still had a mission, so they couldn't give up halfway. But this time, they didn't run to the place where the zombies were densely packed. Instead, they went to their destination. After all, adventuring once was enough. If Xiaoqing was alone, she would definitely go everywhere, but now she had a group of friends. Even if she wanted to take risks, she had to consider her friends. She couldn't gamble with the lives of her friends, so safety was the first priority. The city was too big, and the road was full of zombies, so they walked slowly. When they arrived at the city hall, it was already the afternoon of the next day. Looking at the traces, the Gale squad hadn't arrived yet. Xiaoqing immediately made a decision. "We won't go in tonight. Let's stay outside for a night and see if that group of people is coming. A school is so dangerous. The city hall is definitely not simple." Of course, everyone agreed. They found a safe place where they could see the entrance of the city hall and prepared to eat and sleep. Of course, the night watch was Xiaoqing and Air Dye. Little Baozi couldn't sleep either, so he rolled around in Xiaoqing's arms. Little Baozi ate a lot, such as crystal stones and some nutritious food. He could kill Gu Panpan and Gu Chuan in one meal, and he didn't stop eating. Usually, when he walked on the road, he would hold a crystal stone. However, he didn't grow. Little Baozi looked the same as when he came out of Xiaoqing's belly. He didn't grow at all, except that his little face was a little chubbier. This made Xiaoqing very distressed. Before, she was glad that little Baozi was 3 heads tall when he came out of her belly, which was much easier to take care of than a baby. Now, she was worried that little Baozi's body was damaged because of the car accident and other reasons. Otherwise, why didn't he grow? However, Xiaoqing was distressed for a while. After all, it was her first time raising a baby, so she didn't have much experience. She thought that maybe the baby was so slow at the beginning. They spent the whole night with Little Bun and Dumbo competing to see who was cuter. The next day, when they got up and had a full meal, they saw the members of the Gale superpower team coming in late. Moreover, quite a few of them had injuries on their bodies. They looked a little battered. The few friends who didn't like the Gale squad saw this scene and were very happy in an instant. We are happy to see that you are not doing well. Chapter 61. The Storm Ability user team was indeed in a very sorry state. Even Lin Xiaofeng's arm was wrapped in gauze. Gu Pampan stuck her head out of the car window and whistled. We've been waiting for you all night. If you hadn't come, we would have gone in to take a look. The Gale squad members' faces turned ugly. They looked down on Xiaoqing's team. However, not only did Xiaoqing's team not suffer any casualties as they had imagined, but they also arrived at the city hall without any injuries. Looking at Gu Pampan sighing and clicking her tongue, their faces turned green with a tinge of black, and then a tinge of purple. Xiaoqing got out of the car with a smile. You must be tired after walking all the way. Do you want to take a rest before going in? Lin Xiaofeng was about to speak, but a member of the Gale squad said, No need to rest. Why do we need to rest in such a small place? Lin Xiaofeng's face darkened, and the veins on his forehead throbbed. He said angrily, You are the leader, and I am the leader. Are you the leader of this squad, or am I the leader? That member didn't say anything and lowered his head. Lin Xiaofeng took a deep breath and said embarrassedly, We better take a rest. But we lost the food we brought on the way. Xiaoqing smiled faintly. We brought a lot of food. If you don't mind, come and eat with us. The Gale squad lost their food when they were escaping. They were all injured, so they didn't dare to go deep into the large shopping centers to look for food. The small shops on the roadside had been cleaned out when the apocalypse broke out, so they had been hungry for a day. Even those who didn't like Xiaoqing and the others could only shut their mouths at this moment because they couldn't go against food. Xiaoqing turned to Yin Hanqing and asked him to cook more food. Gu Pampan couldn't help but pull Xiaoqing and whisper, They treated us like that, and you still want to give them food? Sister Qing, you can't be a good person. They will never be grateful to us. Xiaoqing smiled. Do I look like the kind of person who likes to be a good person? Then why? Gu Pampan asked in confusion. Prisoners on death row can still eat their last meal before they die. Besides, we're going to use them as cannon fodder. If they don't eat their fill and have no strength, how can they be qualified to be cannon fodder? Bu Qianlong smiled. All right, don't think too much about it. Go help Hanqing cook. Suddenly enlightened, Gu Pampan ran to help Yin Hanqing. Yin Hanqing still had some rice left, but there were at most 2 bowls left. It was definitely not enough. He heated up some steamed buns and dried meat, and cooked 2 simple dishes. As soon as the food was served, the Gale paranormals began to eat like a hurricane. Only Lin Xiaofeng and Cheng Jiao were left with good manners. Lin Xiaofeng ate very elegantly, but he ate very quickly. Soon, he was full. Sitting next to Xiaoqing, he asked curiously, Do you bring cooking utensils, oil, salt, sauce, and vinegar with you when you go out? A few people in my team are all foodies. My son is growing up, so when we go out on a mission, we have to bring cooking utensils, and ingredients, Xiaoqing said calmly. Lin Xiaofeng was a little speechless. He didn't know what to say, but he was quite clear about one thing. Xiaoqing was definitely hiding her strength. Every time a paranormal team went out on a mission, their heads were hanging on their necks. It was not easy to go back alive. Who would care about food and drinks? Only those who were more relaxed and confident dared to bring cooking utensils, and vinegar. What's more, didn't the fact that they arrived at the entrance of the city hall earlier than them prove their strength? He was afraid that the team members would think that Xiaoqing and the others came here by luck. They would rather die than believe that they were strong. Lin Xiaofeng really didn't want to be enemies with Xiaoqing and the others. Huh? How can you say that? Before one of the Gale paranormals could finish his words, Cheng Jiao stuffed his mouth with a steamed bun. You can't even shut your mouth with rice. Do you want to use a knife? The other team members were also silent. They were already embarrassed to talk. How could they have the nerve to say that when they were eating other people's food? Lin Xiaofeng was a little embarrassed. In fact, They don't mean any harm. They just don't think before they speak. Xiao Qing smiled. It's okay. People like them are more straightforward. Who would argue with cannon fodder? Bickering with cannon fodder was the same as bickering with dead people. She felt that she was quite generous, so she was ready to forgive them. When the Gale paranormals were full, Xiaoqing considerately brought some bandages and the like over. Change your bandages. There will be a fierce battle when we enter the city hall later. Lin Xiaofeng thanked her and then distributed the bandages. Cheng Jiao took the bandages and changed them for him. The cloth on Lin Xiaofeng's arm had been stained red, and the outside was still dirty. Cheng Jiao wrapped the cloth around the wound, revealing the blackened wound underneath. The wound was still bleeding with pus. It was obvious that it had been poisoned. The recovery ability of paranormals was much stronger than that of ordinary people. If it weren't for the poison, Lin Xiaofeng's wound would have started to scab. Xiaoqing still had a lot of medicine in her hand, but she didn't want to give it to Lin Xiaofeng, nor did she want to help Li Xiaofeng. She just watched Cheng Jiao wash Lin Xiaofeng's wound with water, then asked, "Did you cut off the rotten flesh around the wound? It's not good for healing." Cheng Jiao shook her head. "It's useless. I cut it off when I was poisoned. At that time, the red flesh was exposed, but it didn't take long for it to become like this." Cheng Jiao washed Lin Xiaofeng's wound with water many times. Then, she took out a dagger and cut off the rotten flesh. Just as she said, the red flesh was exposed, and the blood that flowed out also turned red. Cheng Jiao poured some powder to stop bleeding and bandaged Lin Xiaofeng's wound. After that, Cheng Jiao became more and more worried. Xiaoqing looked at the situation and asked, "Why don't we rest for another day? We'll go to the city hall tomorrow to take a look." Chapter 62. Lin Xiaofeng felt that Xiaoqing had accommodated them enough. She had waited for so long and provided food and bandages. No matter what the reason was, she had given them enough face. If they continued to put on airs and put on airs, this enmity would be set in stone. So Lin Xiaofeng immediately said, "In fact, they are all minor injuries. But for safety reasons, we should rest for a while before going in to investigate." Xiaoqing nodded and said, "We have already set up the tents. You can sleep for a while and rest up. We will go in to investigate together." Lin Xiaofeng was embarrassed and quickly ordered his team members to set up the tents. His team members were dragging their feet. They were probably still thinking about how troublesome it was to set up the tents themselves. Xiaoqing led some people to help them set up the tents. Then, they went to their own places to rest. They were indeed resting. Xiaoqing's side was quite energetic. They were lying down and chatting. Xiaoqing was very calm and said to everyone, especially Xiao Tong, who was relatively weak, at the critical moment, "Don't show any mercy. Just hide behind them. If there is no danger, then it's fine. If there is a problem, I hope we can all get out of this city. As for them, don't save them and don't care." No one thought that Xiaoqing was cold. Wasn't this the end of the world? If it was a team with good character, maybe they would help them. For this kind of thing, they could die wherever they wanted. No one cared. The team members all expressed that they would remember. When it was almost noon, both sides had rested enough. Yin Hanqing made a lot of portable food and distributed it. After all, they were in the building at noon, so there was certainly no place to cook. "It's almost time. Let's go in." Lin Xiaofeng glanced at the towering city hall and said, "If there was no problem, they should be able to come out before nightfall. If there was an accident, they could find an empty room to stay temporarily and leave someone to keep watch." After the two sides discussed, Xiaoqing's team was the one to lead the way. Originally, Lin Xiaofeng wanted them to lead the way. After all, the pressure of leading the way was relatively high. They owed a lot of favors to Xiaoqing's team, so it was natural for them to lead the way. However, his team members were not willing to do so. They were all saying that they were the ones who led the way the last time. Why should they do the same this time? It was time for Xiaoqing to lead the way. Xiaoqing gave Lin Xiaofeng, who was stuck in the middle, a way out. "Your team members are right. After all, you guys were the ones who opened the path last time. This time, it's our turn. Moreover, your team members are all injured. It's better for you guys to bring up the rear and conserve your energy." Lin Xiaofeng was more grateful to Xiaoqing. After all, Xiaoqing had been giving him face along the way. Compared to his team members who didn't even take the captain's words to heart, he had nothing to say. Lin Xiaofeng had made a decision. This time, when he returned to the base, he must change his team members. At least, he had to change some of them who were not blind, so that they would not offend people and make enemies for him everywhere. The formation of Xiao Qing's team was as follows. Xiao Qing and her son were in the middle, Dai was on the left, Xiao Tong was on the right, and Gu Panpan was in charge of leading the way. Gu Chuan and Yin Hanqing were in charge of assisting. In order not to let Gale's team discover the problem, Xiao Qing told Dai to keep a low profile. She didn't want to scare the zombies and make them not dare to come out. All the way up, Xiao Qing's team members almost didn't make a move. Only Gu Panpan's team members in the front moved. Lin Xiaofeng, who was at the back, couldn't help but frown. It was obvious that Gu Panpan was a strength-type ability user. This was especially obvious, but not rare. Gu Chuan's ability was rarer. The ice element was a variant. Among the thousands of water-type ability users, who knew if there was even a palm-sized number of ice-type ability users? If Gu Chuan's superpower was rare, then Yin Hanqing's superpower was rare. At present, the number of lightning superpowered people was pitifully small. Yin Hanqing might be the third lightning superpowered person to be registered. The third one didn't mean that there were 2 lightning superpowered people in their base. It meant that there were registered lightning superpowered people in all the survivor bases in the country. That was how rare they were. The movements of the 3 people who opened the way were very simple. They didn't make any fancy moves. As soon as the zombies came out, either Gu Chuan would freeze them or Yin Hanqing would use lightning. The zombies that couldn't move were easily dealt with by Gu Panpan. It's nothing. A member of Gale's team muttered. They're all so arrogant. I thought they were very powerful. Lin Xiaofeng was so angry that he didn't want to talk. His team members didn't have eyes, did they? They didn't even have brains. Why didn't they think about it? They were also opening the way, but they were flying in front with all kinds of superpowers. It looked very powerful, but they wasted so many superpowers. Their speed was not as fast as Xiao Qing's team. This team member had to be changed. He must have been blind to have brought such a group of idiots into his team of ability users. Cheng Jiao and Lin Xiaofeng were childhood sweethearts, so Cheng Jiao could tell what Lin Xiaofeng was thinking. She patted Lin Xiaofeng's shoulder and said, "Brother Feng, don't be too angry. We've been on missions together for so long. Don't you know what kind of people they are? They like to take advantage of you, but deep down, they still trust you." Lin Xiaofeng didn't say anything, but he had already made up his mind. Xiao Qing's team was indeed very efficient. It only took them a few minutes to go from the first floor to the second floor. The mission description was very clear that the information was stored in the reference room on the 6th floor. That was to say, they didn't need to go to the top floor. They just needed to go to the reference room on the 6th floor. The City Hall building was quite empty. After all, most of the people inside were staff and leaders. When the army came to rescue, the City Hall building was the first to be rescued. At the beginning of the apocalypse, the City Hall building had been cleaned up by the rescue army. The remaining zombies were the survivors at that time, and the outsiders who came later. The difficulty of this mission was that they had to go deep into the zombie-occupied city. That was why the reward was so high. Xiao Qing's team went all the way to the 4th floor. They didn't encounter any big trouble. So many people couldn't help but feel a little relaxed. Especially the Gale Paranormal team, who was responsible for bringing up the rear. They could be said to have walked leisurely all the way up. They didn't even move their hands. No wonder they let their guard down. But the fact told them that if they let their guard down in this kind of situation, they would often lose their lives. Xiao Qing's team was about to go to the 5th floor when a scream came from behind. Xiao Qing looked back and saw a corpse with half of its neck torn open on the ground. The Gale Paranormal team didn't even see the murderer. Chapter 63. The corpse's neck was torn apart violently, and the broken laryngeal bone could be seen. Blood spurted out and fell to the ground. The body was still warm, but it was already dead. Only the body's limbs were still twitching slightly. Everyone's heart was cold. They didn't even know what the murderer looked like when he killed the man and when he left. It was a mockery. The members of the Fierce Wind Squad, who thought highly of themselves, felt like they had been slapped hard in the face. More than that, they were sad. because the dead man was one of their members. For a long time, no one spoke. After a long time, a member of the Fierce Wind Squad stepped forward, picked up the body, and said, "This is our brother. We have to take him home." Xiaoqing was calm. "The smell of blood will attract more zombies. Even if he died, he wasn't your man. Don't you feel anything?" One of the members of the Fierce Wind Squad roared with red eyes. "This is my brother. So you let your other brothers die because of him?" Xiaoqing said blandly. "I don't think it's a good choice. You know nothing." Another member of the Crazy Concubines squad rushed up and was about to attack. "I want to ask you how you opened the road. Did you do it on purpose? You don't like us, so you let the zombies come here? I can see that you are a woman with a heart as vicious as snakes and scorpions." Before he could do anything, Yin Hanqing had already stepped forward and kicked him away. The man flew out fiercely and fell on top of the dead body. His head and face were stained with blood. Seeing Yin Hanqing attack, the remaining members of the Fierce Wind Squad couldn't hold back anymore. They rushed over. Lin Xiaofeng shouted angrily but didn't stop them. However, these people still had some sense of propriety. Although they attacked, they didn't use their superpowers. Xiaoqing handed the little bun to Yin Hanqing and said calmly, "You all step back. I'm enough." Yin Hanqing and the others were absolutely confident in Xiaoqing. They all took a step back. Xiaotong even took out 5 spice peanuts to eat. It only took Xiaoqing a minute to deal with the 3 of them. Then, they were lying on the ground, unable to get up. It was not a glorious thing for 3 grown men to be beaten by a woman empty-handed and crying out in pain. Not to mention the onlookers, even they themselves felt embarrassed. In the end, Lin Xiaofeng walked over. "Have you calmed down now?" All 3 of them, including the one who had just crawled up from the corpse, lowered their heads. They understood the reason, but they were hit by Xiaoqing in a moment of hot-bloodedness. Lin Xiaofeng hurriedly apologized to Xiaoqing. "I'm really sorry for causing you trouble." Xiaoqing shook her head. "Quickly get rid of the corpse. We can't fight among ourselves anymore. After all, there is still a killer hiding in the dark." Only then did they wake up. It was indeed not the time to fight among themselves. Several members endured the pain and burned the corpse. They put the ashes in a bag and took it away. When they went on the road again, their vigilance was high. After all, there was already a precedent. No matter how stupid they were, they wouldn't be as relaxed as before. Probably the killer in the dark also knew that they were vigilant. Until they reached the 5th floor, that thing didn't make any more moves. When they reached the 6th floor, they became even more vigilant. I originally wanted everyone to spread out and search for it. That way, it would be faster. But now, there's a monster hiding in the dark. I'm sure it's very fast and very lethal. So, we can't spread out and let it kill us one by one. Lin Xiaofeng thought for a moment and then said, "Why don't we search together? Although it will be slower, at least it will be safer." Xiaoqing nodded. "Or we can split into 2 teams. That way, it will be faster." "Let's go together. Safety first," Lin Xiaofeng said with some pain. "I don't want to sacrifice any more brothers." Xiaoqing nodded. "Then we will start from here and search along the corridor. We will only look for the room on one side. When we reach the end, we will go back and look for the room on the other side." Lin Xiaofeng said, "That's the safest way." "I agree. One more thing. Is there an earth ability user? The moment we open the door, we have to prevent something from jumping out. So, if there is an earth ability user with high defense to open the door, it will be safer." Xiaoqing was the first to say, "We don't have one here." "I am." The short guy who was kicked away by Yin Hanqing raised his hand and said, "I am a level 2 earth ability user. I have earth armor and earth shield. I will open the door." "Little 6, you do it." Lin Xiaofeng nodded. "Be careful." Little 6 attached the earth armor to his body and condensed an earth shield in his hand. Then, he went to open the first door on the left. Fortunately, after the first door was opened, nothing came out. However, they didn't let their guard down. Little 6 was the first to enter the door, followed by Yin Hanqing, who had the thunder ability, and a fire ability user from the wind ability user team. Both of them were assault type. If they were in danger, they could quickly help Little 6. The rest of the team came in one after another. 3 people were left to guard the door, in case they were attacked from the front and back. However, there was nothing in the room. They searched around, but found neither information nor zombies. They opened the second door in the same way. The room was also a mess. There were messy bloodstains on the floor, but there was no information or zombies. When they reached the end of the corridor, Little Six tried to open the door, but it was locked. They had encountered 2 rooms with locked doors before, but it wasn't a problem. Little Six moved aside slightly, then covered Pan with an earth shield. Pan took a deep breath and instantly turned into a King Kong Barbie. She kicked the door open. Yes, it was broken. Just as the door shattered, a black shadow pounced out. At this moment, Pan's reaction time was clear. She was very calm and unhurried. She firmly stomped her foot on the ground and then smashed her fist into the thing's head. Chapter 64. The punch was so solid that the zombie's head burst open, and its brains spilled all over the ground. Of course, that was not the point. The point was that the one who had launched the sneak attack had come out again. This time, it had targeted Gu Chuan. Just as it was about to strike, Xiao Qing discovered it first. She quickly waved her vines and whipped it to the ground. Its body hit the ground with a loud noise. Everyone looked at the zombie. It quickly got up and tried to escape, but its lower body was bound by Xiao Qing's vines. It was a young zombie. It should be a male, but its face was rotten beyond recognition. Its hands were different from those of ordinary zombies. Its nails were extraordinarily long, as if its hands were full of sharp knives. It was probably the weapon that had torn open the throat of the Gale Paranormal. Kill it. Avenge our brother. The Fire Paranormal from the Gale Paranormal attacked without saying a word. Fortunately, Lin Xiaofeng was more rational. Don't be too impulsive. We have more people. We won't let it run away. Yes, don't use the fire ability. Burn the vines and it will run away. Xiao Qing tightened the vines and said coldly, those who don't use the wood ability, go first. Don't let it run away. Lin Xiaofeng nodded. This was also the first time Xiao Qing had seen Lin Xiaofeng's special ability. His special ability was also relatively rare. It allowed him to control metal. In his hands, metal could freely change into various shapes to be used in battle. As for Cheng Jiao, she was also a very special paranormal. Her hair could quickly grow and become extraordinarily tough, just like Xiao Qing's vines, which could be used to bind others. The cooperation between Cheng Jiao and Lin Xiaofeng was like that between Xiao Qing and Gu Pan. One was controlling the other, and the other was attacking. They had a tacit understanding. The zombie was very fast, but it couldn't withstand the attacks of 7 or 8 people at the same time. It didn't even have time to react before it was buried in the colorful superpowers. When the light dissipated, only bones were left. Lin Xiaofeng's people breathed a sigh of relief, feeling the pleasure of revenge. The fire-powered paranormal, who hadn't been able to make a move, was so angry that he ran up to the zombie and turned it into ashes. After the group of people finished cleaning up this strange house, they went into the room to search. This room was filled with information, and it was very likely that this was the information room they were looking for. However, there was too much information in this room, and a lot of it was damaged by the zombie hiding in the room. Maybe this zombie was the administrator of the information room. When the apocalypse came, he became a zombie or was bitten, so he specially locked the door, not wanting to turn into a zombie and bite others. However, the documents in the house were all destroyed by the zombies. Xiao Qing and the others searched for a long time, and finally found an incomplete document about water purification. They were all stunned. What should they do with only half of the document? Moreover, it was badly damaged, with a lot of blood and torn fragments. Ordinary people couldn't understand what it was. After a moment of silence, Cheng Jiao suddenly said, "My brother is a civil servant. He once told me that there are at least 3 copies of important information. One is stored in the database on the computer, one is stored in a USB drive, and one is printed in paper. Should we go up and have a look?" Lin Xiaofeng asked. "Even if we go up and find the computer and the USB flash drive, there is no electricity. How can we find the information? How can we determine which USB flash drive the information is in?" Xiao Qing asked calmly. There is a research room under the government building. Even if the power outside is cut off, the research room won't be cut off. We still have a chance. Cheng Jiao gritted her teeth and said, since we are already here, we should at least do the task perfectly. Otherwise, it will be a waste of time. Xiao Qing was silent for a while, and then asked for Yin Hanqing's opinion. Should we go to the basement? Let's go. Gu Panpan and Gu Chuan exchanged their opinions, and then said, if we can really find the information and the method to purify the water, it will be good for us. Xiao Qing then looked at Lin Xiaofeng. Lin Xiaofeng was silent for a while, and then said, sorry, I want to take my brothers out first. He knew that it was unkind of him to do this, but it was true. If they lost any more members, the Gale Squad would suffer a great loss. Although he kept saying that he would replace all the members when he returned, in fact, he hoped more than anyone that none of his members would stay here forever. They could go back and submit the information, and he didn't want to take any more risks. Cheng Jiao's eyes widened. She wanted to say something, but after a while, she still didn't say anything. Finally, she lowered her head. Then you guys go out and wait. I will take my team to go down and have a look. It would be best if there is electricity, but if not, we will just leave. Xiao Qing didn't complain. She just said lightly. She didn't want to be a saint. She just wanted the environment to become better and better. At least, she wanted her son to have a better life in the future. After all, she wasn't the only one who benefited from this. Chapter 65. Feeling ashamed, Lin Xiaofeng left with his team members. The two teams separated on the first floor. Xiao Qing led her team members into the elevator. She never thought of herself as a good person. She even thought that she was cold-blooded and heartless, but she had her own bottom line. She had her own judgment on what should be done, what should not be done, what should not be done, what should not be done, and what should be done. Due to the lack of electricity, the elevator couldn't operate normally. There were no stairs to the basement, so they could only take the elevator. Gu Panpan violently destroyed the elevator, and the elevator inside screamed as it fell. Finally, it hit the ground with a loud bang. Xiao Qing wrapped the vines around the door handle not far away. In order to make sure that the vines would not break when they went down, Xiao Qing used several vines to make a very strong vine rope. To ensure safety, Xiao Qing was the first one to go down. She grabbed the vines and slowly climbed down the dark passage. At last, she landed on the wreckage of the elevator. The basement was particularly dark and gloomy. She frowned and took out some clothes from her space. Then, she found an iron rod and wrapped the clothes around one end of the iron rod to make a simple torch. There was no one with firepower in their team. In order to make a fire, everyone would bring a lighter with them when they went out. Xiao Qing was no exception. She lit the torch with the lighter. When the light illuminated the area around her, she was startled. Next to her was a zombie that was beyond recognition. It was smashed under the wreckage of the elevator. Its body was broken at the waist. Its upper body was crawling on the ground, dragging long guts out. Anyone who saw this scene would be scared out of their wits. She mercifully freed the poor zombie and then looked around. She didn't find any other zombies, so she pulled the vines, and the people above came down one after another. When everyone came down, Xiao Qing had already found the light switch. She pressed the switch, and a row of lights lit up one after another. The originally dark space instantly became as bright as day. It was so bright that it stung people's eyes. The entire basement wasn't big. There were only 2 rows of 8 rooms and an empty space. However, it was very messy. It was hard to tell what it used to be. It's better to be cautious. Let's start from the first room. Xiao Qing didn't dare to let her companions take the risk, so she used vines to open the door. The vines wriggled up the doorknob and twisted it open. Then the vines pushed the door open. The room was dark, and only the dusty floor could be seen from the part where the light shone in. The rest of the room was gloomy. Xiao Qing controlled the vines and groped around the wall. She found the switch and turned on the light. They didn't know whether it was luck or not. As soon as the light was turned on, they saw a lot of computers in the room. Who knows how to use computers? Xiao Qing went out first. She didn't find any danger, so she turned back and asked, "Me?" Gu Chuan came over and turned on the computer. "I learned programming in college," Several other people also helped to turn on the rest of the computers. The computers here had passwords. Gu Chuan tried and began to crack them. Xiaoqing didn't know how to do this, so she said, "You guys stay here. I'll go out and have a look." Xiaoqing didn't go far. She went out of the door and looked around. There were definitely zombies here. After all, there was no elevator. The mutated zombies couldn't leave. They must be hiding now. I can feel. Xiaoqing was looking around. Suddenly, a somewhat childish voice sounded in her mind. She was stunned. She looked back and saw Xiao Tong standing at the door with a nervous expression. "Just now, sister. It's me." Xiao Tong's fingers were intertwined. She nervously drew circles on the ground with her toes. Her voice was thin and soft. It directly sounded in Xiaoqing's mind. "What's the matter?" Xiaoqing was very surprised. Xiao Tong's eyes were bright. She was like a child who had just learned to speak. Her pronunciation was very unclear. Before, breaking through learning, Xiaoqing almost understood. Xiao Tong meant that when she broke through to the second level, she learned to convey her thoughts with her consciousness. This should be the unique ability of psychics. This ability may not be useful for others, but for Xiao Tong, who couldn't speak, it was the most useful ability. Xiaoqing was also very excited. Since the moment she brought Xiao Tong home, she treated her as a family member. Otherwise, she wouldn't use Xiao as her surname. Now, Xiao Tong could use another way to do what she wanted but couldn't. Xiaoqing was also happy for her. "Sister." Xiao Tong looked at Xiaoqing nervously and shyly. Her beautiful big eyes were shining. "I like you." Chapter 66. Xiaoqing blushed inexplicably. It felt good to be relied on and loved wholeheartedly. Of course, it had nothing to do with love. "Sister, over there." Xiao Tong turned her face to a corner. She was a psychic paranormal, so her perception was different from others. She could sense the abnormal spiritual waves in that corner. "Follow behind me. Be careful and guard against this." Xiaoqing touched her head and told Yin Hanqing and the others. Then, she walked to the corner with only Air Dai and Xiao Tong. When they reached the corner, even Xiaoqing was shocked. The ground was littered with corpses. All of them were mutilated corpses. Some of them had already mutated, while others had already turned into zombies. All of them had died in this corner. In the corner, there was a curled-up person, probably a human. Her body was covered with dirty blood, and her breathing was very weak. When Xiaoqing came over, the girl raised her head. The left side of her face was rotten and hideous, while the right side was as smooth as a freshly peeled egg. Her voice was hoarse and terrible. "A living person. Who are you?" Xiaoqing frowned. She didn't feel any murderous intent from the girl. She paused for a long time, and then said slowly, "You are not living person." "She is." Then, she closed her mouth and didn't say anything. Xiao Tong suddenly looked at the girl. They didn't say anything, but some slight energy waves rippled in the air. They were probably communicating with their minds. After a long time, the girl reached out and stuck her hand into her own chest. She pulled out a yellowish thing the size of an egg and handed it to Xiao Tong. Her normal eye was suddenly filled with tears. She said softly, "The USB flash drive has a password. It's my birthday, 199000613. If you enter the wrong password, the USB flash drive will format itself." "Thank you." Xiao Tong looked at Xiaoqing. She didn't say anything. Xiaoqing also understood. She took out a military knife and gave it to Xiao Tong. Xiao Tong personally freed the girl. After the girl stopped breathing completely, Xiao Tong told Xiaoqing the whole story. The girl had a very special disease. Her eyes couldn't see the sun. Even if the cornea was replaced, it would be useless. Her father had been doing all kinds of research, hoping to cure her disease. Although the girl's eyes weren't good, she was a genius. For example, the water purification method was something she had researched. She had sent the information over just in time for the outbreak of the apocalypse. When they were in the basement, because all the researchers were physically weak, when the apocalypse broke out, all of them were infected by the zombie virus. Some became zombies in the early stages, and some were bitten. Due to her high IQ, the girl awakened a psychic ability. However, She was bitten during the awakening process and turned into a half-human, half-zombie. She couldn't die or live even if she wanted to. Before those people became zombies, they begged her to end their lives so that they couldn't go out and hurt others. It was better to die than to become a walking dead who hurt their own kind. Therefore, she was left alone, struggling bitterly. The zombie that was smashed to death by the elevator wreckage was deliberately left behind. Firstly, it was too lonely to be alone. Secondly, it was a warning. If someone tried to take away all the information here, she would be able to find it. After everything was done, the girl sat in the corner. Her psychic ability could make her cells divide constantly, but they were constantly swallowed by the zombie virus. She could only feel her body being swallowed by the zombie virus little by little, and she was losing control of herself little by little, until Xiaoqing and the others came. Finally, she could be free. She didn't have to struggle in madness and despair every day and night. Death was a kind of relief. Xiaotong held the yellow thing and handed it to Xiaoqing. It should be something between an energy source and a zombie crystal. Xiaoqing shook his head. She gave it to you. You can take it. I don't need it. When your level is higher, you can protect me. If I meet her father in the future, I must tell him that she is living a good life. Hearing this, Xiaotong accepted it happily. Then, she sent a message to Xiaoqing with sparkling eyes. Xiaoqing hung the special crystal on her neck with a vine twig, so that she could absorb it at any time. I will remember it. If I have a chance to meet this girl's father in the future, I will tell him that I met this girl one day, and she is living a good life. After the girl's body was disposed of, Xiaoqing took air dye and Xiaotong back. When he got back, he saw several people working around the computer. What's wrong? I found a document in the computer. I want to back up it with a USB flash drive, but the USB flash drive needs a password, Gu Chuan said with a headache. The password is 199000613. There is a complete document in it. You can check it. If it is, we can go, Xiaoqing said in a low voice. Gu Chuan checked it and found a complete document in the USB flash drive. He couldn't help but be surprised. How did you know? Xiaoqing told them what had happened just now, and they all sighed. Since they got the document, they didn't need to find anything else. Following the method they used when they came, they let the vines climb up and find a place to fix it. Then, Xiaoqing took the lead and climbed up first. Although there was light underground, it was full of the smell of blood, decay, gloominess, and mold. It was very depressing. As soon as they came out, they couldn't help but take a deep breath. Well, the task is done. Now we just need to go back and hand in the task. Xiaoqing breathed a sigh of relief. Let's go out and see if the storm squad is still there. They must have run away with the incomplete document. Gu Panpan couldn't help but say, what level 3 storm squad? They are just a group of shameless hooligans. Xiaoqing laughed as she walked out. Panpan, you're actually quite gentle. Look, you only know how to scold people with these few words. I will call them a group of idiots. Gu Panpan was not convinced. When they walked out of the door, they were all stunned. The ground was full of corpses, and they were all familiar corpses. The Storm Squad. Chapter 67. Xiao Lu's body was torn in half, and his internal organs were scattered all over the ground. The two halves of his body were badly mutilated. The chest of the fire ability user was torn open, revealing his broken bones and internal organs. The young man who was kicked away by Yin Hanqing was even more miserable. From his waist down, only his bones were left. Corpses lay on the ground one after another, and the only one alive was Lin Xiaofeng. His left arm was broken, and it hung limply on the ground. He lay on the ground covered in blood and was on the verge of death. When he saw Xiaoqing, he shouted hoarsely, Jiao Jiao. Jiao Jiao has been taken away. What was that? Xiaoqing calmly took out some medicine to stop the bleeding on Lin Xiaofeng's body. Lin Xiaofeng grabbed Xiaoqing's arm with his right hand that could still move and said anxiously, it's a mutated zombie. It's very strong and can tear a person in half. There's also a mutated zombie dog with it. Captain Xiao, please save Jiao Jiao. Xiaoqing was expressionless, and he didn't want to help. He just slowly sprinkled medicine on Lin Xiaofeng. Lin Xiaofeng said anxiously. As long as you save Jiao Jiao, all the rewards of this mission will be yours. If you die here, the rewards will be ours when we go back, Xiao Qing said expressionlessly. Not only that, as long as you save Jiao Jiao, all my assets will be yours. Lin Xiaofeng's tears fell from the corners of his eyes. Not only his teammates, but he also thought too highly of himself. That was why he fell so heavily. Cheng Jiao was his childhood sweetheart and also his lover. They had been together since the apocalypse, and they had supported each other. However, they fell in this place. His brothers were all dead, and even Cheng Jiao's fate was unknown. Why? Xiao Qing asked with confusion. I thought you would beg me to take you out of this city. After all, she was taken away by a zombie. Even if she didn't die, she would become a zombie. I love her. Lin Xiaofeng's glasses were nowhere to be seen. He clutched Xiao Qing's arm tightly, and his voice was extremely hoarse. Han Qing, you guys take Captain Lin to the car first. I'll look around and see if I can find Cheng Jiao. Xiao Qing let go of Lin Xiaofeng and prepared to check it out. She didn't think that Cheng Jiao was still alive. After all, not all zombies were like her and Dai, who caught a living person and kept them alive. She wanted to search around and let Lin Xiaofeng owe her a favor. If she could find Cheng Jiao's body and bring it back, it would be even better. She didn't let Lin Xiaofeng down. Dai followed Xiao Qing without hesitation. He had become Xiao Qing's little tail. Wherever Xiao Qing went, he had to follow. He didn't want to be separated from Xiao Qing for even a moment. Even if Xiao Qing disappeared from his sight for more than a certain amount of time, he would go crazy. Xiao Qing also knew Dai's habits, so she took Dai and went in the direction that Lin Xiaofeng said. Soon, they found a clue because there were bloody dog paw prints on the ground. Xiao Qing and Dai started to search along the bloody dog paw prints. The dog paw prints finally stopped in front of a shop with a smashed glass door. Xiao Qing tentatively walked into the house. Once she reached the door, a zombie dog jumped out, baring its fangs and dripping saliva mixed with blood. It wasn't very rotten. It stared at Xiao Qing fiercely. Dumbo Air quickly rushed up and fought with the zombie dog. The zombie dog had good strength and agility, but it was not as good as Dumbo Air. Soon, it was beaten by Dumbo Air and lay on the ground, crying. In the end, it was killed by Dai. After killing the zombie dog, the two of them walked in. As soon as they entered, they saw a shocking scene. Cheng Jiao, who was dying, was pushed against the wall by a tall zombie. Her shirt was torn, and her pants were completely torn. Although they were blocked by the zombie's body and couldn't see what happened, Xiao Qing could guess. Cheng Jiao's arms were broken, so she couldn't struggle at all. She stared at the ceiling blankly, and bright red blood kept flowing out of her lips. Seeing this scene, Xiao Qing felt that her hands were trembling. Cheng Jiao was raped by a zombie, so she couldn't die even if she wanted to. She didn't think that it was risky to agree to Lin Xiaofeng's request to search for Cheng Jiao. There was only one thought in her mind, which was to kill this special zombie. When the zombie heard the sound, it threw Cheng Jiao aside and walked towards Xiao Qing with its swaying thing. It looked at Xiao Qing with a strange desire, which made Xiao Qing feel disgusted. Dai couldn't stand it either. He didn't know why he was angry, but he felt that his precious treasure was being violated by someone else. He rushed up quickly, and when he fought with the zombie, his first target was the zombie's lower body. In particular, that important part became the object of his attention. After being stepped on, the zombie went crazy. Before it could do anything to Dai, it was entangled by vines. However, this zombie was very strong, and the vines only restrained it for a second before it broke. However, there was an endless stream of vines that climbed up layer by layer. It didn't matter if the vines were broken, but when the old ones fell, new ones would immediately replace them. Before the zombies could fight back, they were beaten by Dumbo until they screamed miserably. In particular, a key part of their body was almost broken by Dumbo's stomp. However, it was a huge burden for Xiao Qing to use her superpower in such a reckless manner. Her face quickly turned pale, but she still gritted her teeth and continued to release vines to bind the zombie. That zombie was really tough. Dai tried for a long time, but couldn't leave any big scars on its body, let alone seriously injure it. Xiao Qing gradually calmed down. She was indeed a little impulsive just now. After calming down, Xiaoqing began to observe. She didn't believe that this zombie didn't have any weakness. The zombie's clothes were burned, which meant that fire didn't have any effect on it. Cheng Jiao must have tried to bind this zombie when she was facing the fierce wind squad. Then, she cooperated with Lin Xiaofeng to attack it, but it didn't work. Otherwise, the fierce wind squad wouldn't have been almost wiped out, and Cheng Jiao wouldn't have been kidnapped and humiliated. Xiaoqing observed carefully. No matter what, she had to kill this zombie today, not only for Cheng Jiao. Obviously, Cheng Jiao wasn't the first victim. In a corner not far away, there were several naked female corpses. Although some of them were rotten, some were relatively new. It was obvious that they had been humiliated when they were alive, and there was a big hole in their stomachs. Even if it was for the good of the people, she was going to kill this zombie. Chapter 68. Xiaoqing's long and sharp nails were moving rhythmically. For the first time, she was multitasking. On one hand, she was using vines to bind the zombie. On the other hand, she was rushing forward. Together with air dye, they were fighting the zombie. During the fight, Xiaoqing had been constantly trying to attack the zombie's throat, head, and other vital points. However, she did not receive any ridicule. Until she attacked the zombie's eyes, the zombie dodged for the first time. Xiaoqing's eyes lit up. She and air dye began to attract the zombie's attention. Finally, when the zombie was busy running around, one of its eyes was poked blind. The huge zombie howled on the spot. Xiaoqing didn't even have time to breathe a sigh of relief before she heard a rustling sound coming from the surroundings. When she looked up, she saw 5 or 6 little zombies with umbilical cords around their bodies. They were like half-rotten monkeys crawling over. Their eyes were very big. When they stared at people, they looked very scary. They would only let out a strange cry. Xiaoqing suddenly understood why the female corpses in the corner had a huge hole in their stomachs. These monsters should have crawled out from their bodies. They all crawled out from the stomachs of the corpses. Why were they not as cute as her little bun? So it was better to die. The monkey-like baby zombies rushed over while crying. Then, they were swallowed by the man-eating flower. The man-eating flower lazily stretched its huge leaves. Pia! It slapped a baby zombie that was trying to get close to Xiaoqing to the ground. Another one rushed over and was swallowed by the man-eating flower. It was not worried about indigestion at all. The man-eating flower had a very good appetite. It swallowed a few zombies in one bite. Once they entered the mouth of the man-eating flower, they were paralyzed by the venom secreted by the flower. Then, they were quickly digested. The man-eating flower had not eaten so full for a long time. It was happy and twisted there. When the big zombie saw its last helpers being slapped on the ground like rubber balls and eaten one by one, it tried to run away. However, Xiaoqing's vines kept entangling it. When it was broken, new vines would replace it. The big zombie was about to go crazy. It opened its mouth and spat out a ball of fluffy things. When that thing came out, it drilled into Xiaoqing and air dye's bodies. Although Xiaoqing was prepared, she still could not block it completely. She gritted her teeth and jumped on the zombie's back. At the same time, the vines crazily wrapped around it. Air dye also rushed over and hugged the zombie. Xiaoqing held the military knife and fiercely stabbed it into the zombie's eye socket. Stab after stab, black blood mixed with the ruptured eyeball sputtered out, causing the zombie to continuously howl as if it had gone crazy. Xiaoqing had already felt that something was growing and spreading in her body. It was the same feeling as if she had planted a seed in someone else's body. The moment it exploded, the body was full of plants. She knew that she could not waste a minute. She fiercely stabbed into the zombie's eye socket. The tip of the knife pierced through the back of the zombie's head. Again and again, the back of its head was poked into a hornet's nest. The last zombie was dead, but it was still fixed in place by the vines and air dye. Xiaoqing stabbed it until its head was full of holes. Then Xiaoqing kicked its body away. She grabbed air dye and stuck her hand into air dye's abdomen. Air dye did not resist at all. It just stared at Xiaoqing with its big eyes and let Xiaoqing search inside its abdomen. Xiaoqing searched for a while and suddenly pulled her hand out. Then, she pulled out a thin mass of daughter. This kind of plant was like a vine. It used a vine-like structure to climb on other plants. Then, it would extend sharp thorns from the parts of the plant that were in contact with the plant. It would pierce the plant's epidermis and absorb nutrients for its own growth. In the end, the plant that it climbed on would gradually die due to lack of nutrients. Then, it would look for other plants to climb on. In short, it was a very disgusting plant. After that massive daughter was pulled out, more daughters started to grow in Dai's body. Xiaoqing gritted her teeth. She cut a wound on her wrist with the military knife and stabbed it into Dai's abdomen again. As expected, the seeds of the daughter climbed into Xiaoqing's body through the wound. Dai suddenly grabbed Xiaoqing's arm and tried to pull it out. He should have sensed Xiaoqing's thoughts. Xiaoqing grabbed Dai's hand and said, "Don't move. I have a wood power. I have a way to deal with them. Don't pull it. It hurts." Dai froze. He didn't know what to do and didn't dare to move. It was as if he didn't notice that there was a hole in his abdomen. All he could think about was the wound on Xiaoqing's hand. When Dai's body was clear of the daughter, Xiaoqing let out a sigh of relief. She pulled her hand out and pushed Dai. "Go check on Chengjiao. I'll see if I can get rid of it." Dai didn't move. He squatted down and looked at Xiaoqing without blinking. He was very stubborn, especially when it came to the issue of leaving Xiaoqing. He was as stubborn as a bull. Even Xiaoqing couldn't persuade him. Xiaoqing had to give up. She endured the pain of her internal organs being pierced by the daughter. She started to communicate with the daughter with her wood power. These daughters had lost their master, so they multiplied and grew without any scruples. Xiaoqing's wood elemental energy was loved by all plants in the world, and the daughters were no exception. At the very beginning, they tentatively came in contact with the wood elemental energy, then began to unscrupulously extend their bodies towards the wood elemental energy. When they had almost wrapped the wood power into a ball, Xiaoqing activated her power again. She wrapped a ball of energy around the daughter and attacked it from the inside. Xiaoqing wanted to get rid of the daughter directly. However, she found that they were very stubborn. They kept growing and multiplying. At this rate, it would take Xiaoqing about a month to get rid of them. In the end, Xiaoqing gave up. She directly tamed the daughter. After all, she hadn't found a third mutant plant after upgrading. Although the daughter didn't have much effect on zombies, it was very useful against humans. 1 or 2 daughter seeds were too small. People wouldn't be able to find them if they didn't know about their existence. It was a must-have for traveling and killing people. After taming the daughter, Xiaoqing's face was terribly pale. She walked to Chengjiao. Chengjiao had already used her broken right hand to put her left hand back to its original position. The clicking sounds were particularly frightening. "Are you okay?" Xiaoqing asked softly. Chengjiao's voice was hoarse. "Lend me a knife." Chapter 69. Xiaoqing didn't say anything and silently carried Chengjiao back. When they got back, Chengjiao was already asleep. Lin Xiaofeng had been holding on until he saw Xiaoqing carrying Chengjiao back. Then, he closed his eyes to rest. He was already at his limit and had been holding on. When Lin Xiaofeng woke up, he found that his car was shaking. When he turned his head, he could see Chengjiao's pale face and her bandaged stomach. He didn't see any big wounds on her body. He relaxed immediately, and the wounds all over his body started to hurt. Xiaoqing was sitting in front of them. Hearing the sound, she turned her head. "Don't worry. Her body is seriously injured, and she's mentally exhausted. I gave her some sleeping pills and let her sleep a little longer." "Thank you," Lin Xiaofeng said sincerely. Xiaoqing curled her lips slightly and said with a little evil tone, "You really love her. She and I were childhood sweethearts. We grew up together. Many people say that 2 childhood sweethearts can't fall in love with each other because they are too familiar with each other. But I'm different from Chengjiao. I love her very much, and she loves me very much. After this kind of relationship settled down, it became like family." Lin Xiaofeng laughed self-deprecatingly. "I treat her as my lover, but I also treat her like a sister. I can't protect her. Do you know what happened to her before?" Xiaoqing looked Lin Xiaofeng up and down and said with a faint smile. Hearing this, Lin Xiaofeng's face paled a lot, but soon, he became determined. "No matter what happened to her, it's all in the past. I will comfort her and heal her inner wounds. Xiaoqing didn't say anything else. She turned around lazily with her back facing Lin Xiaofeng. Don't forget your previous promise. Don't worry. Lin Xiaofeng moved his body and pulled Cheng Jiao into his arms. Their relationship was already very complicated. There were elements of love, family, and it was hard to let go of each other. The more complicated the relationship, the more sincere and solid it was. Cheng Jiao woke up at dinner time. Because of her injuries, she had been drinking soup, steamed buns, and minced meat. During dinner time, Cheng Jiao was very calm. She and Lin Xiaofeng were in the same tent. Xiaoqing knew that she would tell Lin Xiaofeng everything. Then, Xiaoqing also entered the tent. Once in the tent, Xiaoqing found Erdai sitting in the tent with his pants down to his knees. He lowered his head and looked at the area between his legs seriously. However, zombies really didn't have that kind of ability, except for the mutated zombie today. Xiaoqing looked at Dai's round and white exposed. He couldn't help but kick him. What are you doing? Luckily, Xiaotong is not here. Dai felt wronged. He pulled Xiaoqing's hand and touched it. Then, his hand was slapped away by Xiaoqing. Dai felt wronged. He stared at Xiaoqing as if to ask why he couldn't do what the tall zombie could do. Dai vaguely knew that what he saw before was the most intimate thing between a man and a woman. Subconsciously, he also wanted to do that with Xiaoqing. Unfortunately, his body wasn't strong enough. Xiaoqing pinched Dai's inner thigh and said coldly, "Go to sleep, or I'll chop it off." Dai immediately clamped his thighs and became very obedient. Xiaoqing pulled up his pants and sighed. "It's okay if you're at home, but don't take off your pants casually outside. It won't be good if other people see it." Dai nodded confusedly and cooperated with Xiaoqing to pull up his pants. Xiaoqing sometimes felt that Dai was a very possessive brat. However, he was also very strong. "Don't sleep tonight. Absorb it and see if you can break through." Xiaoqing stuffed a few high-level zombie crystal nuclei into Dumbo's hands. She didn't notice that there was a crystal nucleus of the zombie she had just killed today. Dai was also obedient. He put all the nuclei in the small pouch that Xiaoqing gave him a long time ago. Then, he took them out one by one to absorb them. When Xiaotong came in with Little Bun, the family of 4 each took a nuclei and started to absorb them. The higher the level, the more energy they needed. Take Xiaoqing as an example. She was now at level 3. Absorbing level 1 zombie nuclei was almost useless to her. Level 2 zombie nuclei weren't very useful to her either. Only level 3 to level 4 nuclei were suitable for her to absorb. Low-level nuclei were useless. High-level nuclei couldn't be used. Level 3 or 4 nuclei were more suitable for her. However, level 3 or 4 zombie nuclei weren't easy to find. She only had 1 level 4 zombie nuclei. She still had a few level 3 nuclei. As for the level 4 one, she planned to absorb it when she returned to the base and was safe. For now, she just needed to absorb level 2 or 3 nuclei. The next morning, when they were ready to leave, Xiaoqing looked at Lin Xiaofeng's expression. She didn't find anything strange. Not all men could accept that their lover was raped. Some men would even push the blame to the woman. Even some people were like that. When a woman was raped, it must be because the woman was usually flirtatious, or came into contact with some hooligans, or went to some places that she shouldn't have. In short, it was the woman's fault. Xiaoqing had seen a lot of such things. She felt that Lin Xiaofeng, who was so calm, was still a man. She could blackmail him less when they went back. His teammates were all dead. His wife was raped by zombies. He was also seriously injured. He was quite pitiful. Of course, he owed her everything. They went back much faster than when they came. Of course, they wanted to relax. After all, in this huge post-apocalyptic world, the base was considered safe. In the base, they didn't have to worry about being bitten by zombies when they woke up in the middle of the night. They could also rest and relax. When they returned to the base, they bumped into the higher-ups of other bases. Xiaoqing took them to hand in the mission. When they handed in the mission, the girl in the mission hall was stunned. A level 1 paranormal team with a terrible name completed a difficult mission without losing a single member. However, of the level 3 paranormal team, only the captain and vice-captain were left. Wasn't this a miracle? All the rewards belonged to them. Lin Xiaofeng supported Cheng Jiao. He couldn't help but gasp when he spoke. The mission has been handed in. Captain Xiao, I'll take Jiao Jiao back first. I'll treat you to a meal next time. Xiao Qing watched Lin Xiaofeng leave. She was secretly happy. After all, they had been busy for so long. They had been on the verge of death several times. Finally, it was time to share the spoils. Just the reward points alone should be enough for their team to level up, right? Chapter 70. After a preliminary inspection, this is indeed the mission target's information. The information has been submitted to the higher-ups for review. The big-breasted girl sighed, but her actions were still quick. If the review passes, your Baby Ming team will become a Level 2 team. Please go to the wall over there to see the treatment of a Level 2 team. The rest of the rewards will be calculated and distributed this afternoon. Please come and collect them in time. Okay. Xiao Qing was very relaxed physically and mentally. She led her teammates back. The information was quickly handed over to the higher-ups. The head of the base was called Hao Yun. When the news was handed over, he was receiving the higher-ups from the Jiangbei survivor base. As soon as he heard that the information was in his hands, Hao Yun was very happy. Immediately handed over to the research department to see if it is complete. To be able to find this information in a city occupied by zombies, your base is really full of strong people. The head of the Jiangbei survivor base was called Yin Pingshan. He was a man who looked to be in his late 20s. He looked very gentle and gave off the feeling of a university professor. He had a good temperament. Even if he stood in a group of people, he would still be very eye-catching. However, compared with the man next to him, he was immediately inferior. The man next to him looked a little smaller than him. His skin was exceptionally white. It was so white that it was a little bit morbid. It was as if he had not seen the sun for a long time. His facial features were delicate, but he did not look feminine. His eyebrows were a little sharp. The 3 buttons on his collar were neatly buttoned. His sitting posture was also as straight as a pine tree. His whole person exuded a sense of abstinence. It made people want to tear his clothes and break his calmness. Is it about the research on water purification? The man's voice was also a little cold. It was very clear. It was easy to associate it with the crisp sound of jade beads hitting white porcelain. Hao Yun did not hide anything. He smiled and said, "Yes, that's the information. I originally wanted to wait for my researchers to develop the technology and then announce it to the major survival bases." Yin Pingshan could not help but sneer. When the time came, would he really be willing to announce it? He was afraid that he would only be willing to use this information in exchange for benefits. Although he was well aware of it, Yin Pingshan still complimented him. Major General Hao is really broad-minded. Hao Yun was making excuses over there, and it was really annoying to watch. The man next to her acted as if he didn't know about this. He asked straightforwardly, "Can I see the information?" The atmosphere immediately froze for a moment. After a while, Hao Yun laughed and said, "Of course, but we have to wait for our researchers to verify it. After all, the information has just been brought back, and we don't know if it's complete yet. Anyway, you will be staying at the base for a few days, so there's no rush." He nodded stiffly. After dinner, they returned to their resting area. Yin Pingshan said helplessly, "Ah Shun, what did I tell you before we came?" "Don't talk." The man thought for a moment and then said with a serious face, "You actually told me not to speak?" Yin Pingshan was so angry that he wanted to laugh. "Do you know that I almost fell out with that narrow-minded Hao Yun today? You even told me not to speak." There was no expression on the man's face, but his eyes flashed with innocence. "You told me not to talk." Yin Pingshan was speechless. "I'm so angry because of you." "Sigh, forget it. I've already said it. That's it." Yin Pingshan waved his hand helplessly. At this time, he didn't have any dignity to speak of. He carefully reminded, "Ming Shun, you must remember, when I don't tell you to speak, you must not speak." The man named Ming Shun nodded, and then sat at the table without speaking. Yin Pingshan couldn't help but walk around. "We must get the information on the water purification. Otherwise, Hao Yun will definitely use it to threaten us in the future and gain some benefits. We can't do anything to Hao Yun. Maybe we can go and see the people who brought the information back?" Maybe they have a backup. Ming Shin took a sip of water and looked at him without blinking. Yin Pingshin was in a bad mood. He slammed the table. Why didn't you say a word when you should have spoken? Ming Shin looked at the ripples in the cup and said slowly, You didn't tell me to speak. Yin Pingshin was speechless. I give up. Ming Shin paused for a moment and then said, Oh, Yin Pingshin was completely worn out. He muttered to himself, We should first check which team brought the information back. Then we can contact them in private. No, Hao Yun will be suspicious. Ming Shin slowly put down the teacup and said, Baby Ming, your cousin? Isn't he dead? Yin Pingshin was stunned for a moment and didn't react. Ming Shan was also led astray by his thoughts. He said, The team of ability users is called Baby Ming. Yin Pingshin finally reacted. He rolled his eyes without caring about his image. Why do they have such a name? This team leader must be a woman. Speaking of which, how did you know? When the girl came to deliver the information, I saw them. Baby Ming and Fierce Wind. Ming Shin said honestly, It's easy now that we have a name. Yin Pingshin touched his chin. Next, we have to think about how to get close to them. While they were thinking about how to get close to them, the other side was dividing the loot. All the zombie crystals were poured out and piled up into a small hill 1 meter high. There was even a sharp point. Shao Qing divided all the crystal stones into 6 piles, 1 for each of them. You can keep them however you want. I heard that zombie nuclei have become the most common currency when I came back. No matter if it's between bases or between ordinary people, these nuclei are almost all used. You can absorb them or spin them. You can do whatever you want with them. No one declined. They all put away their share and went home to eat. In the afternoon, they still had to collect their spoils of war. At that time, it would be time for them to split the loot. Shao Qing estimated that they would all become millionaires when they returned from this trip. After Yin Hanqing and the others went back to their room, Shao Qing brought the few brats into the room to eat. In the evening, she would try to absorb some of the level 4 zombie crystal to see if she could break through again. Even if she couldn't break through to level 4, she could at least improve her strength. It would be good for herself and the whole team. Chapter 71. The first day back in the base was the busiest. Sharing the loot took a lot of time. Lin Xiaofeng also sent people to deliver a lot of food and zombie crystals, not to mention other miscellaneous things. Lin Xiaofeng and Cheng Jiao were both badly injured, so they couldn't come over. They sent people to tell Shao Qing that they owed her a favor, and that if she needed anything, she should tell him. As long as he could do it, he wouldn't refuse. When they were sharing the loot, Gu Panpan still didn't understand. Sister Qing, why did you save him at that time? I don't like the whole team. Panpan, you need to think about the long term. Shao Qing rubbed Gu Panpan's head. If the Fierce Wind squad had all died there, our squad would really be the ones who stood out when we returned to the base, the kind that would soar into the sky. In the future, no other squad of ability users would dare to team up with us. They would think, if a level 1 ability user squad didn't suffer a single casualty while a level 3 ability user squad was completely wiped out, then what did this level 1 ability user squad rely on to come back alive? We have the strength. Gu Panpan was very confused. They don't know. Shao Qing chuckled and said, They will think that we climbed out of the base by stepping on Lin Xiaofeng's dead bodies. Of course, they will be wary of us in the future. Of course, the most important thing is that as the leader of a level 3 squad, Lin Xiaofeng must be filthy rich. You see, if he dies, how much can we take? If he's alive, we can take more. Gu Panpan nodded with starry eyes and said, I understand. Sister Qing, let's move everything back. Come to my place for dinner tonight. Shao Qing patted Gu Panpan and prepared to go out to see if there were any fresh vegetables and fruits. She wanted to exchange some for Gu Panpan and the others. After all, the food they ate every day was not fresh after such a long trip outside. It was time to reward everyone's stomachs. The fruits and vegetables grown in the base were very expensive, but they were fresh and tasted good. Shao Qing and the others were all tycoons now, so they naturally didn't care about such a small amount of crystal stones. However, before going to buy vegetables, Shao Qing planned to go to the market to see if there were any good military knives that were sharp and easy to use. Shao Tong would get one for self-defense. In this way, Xiaoqing would be more at ease when she went out in the future. Xiaoqing strolled around the market, but she couldn't find a suitable military knife. In the end, she settled for the next best thing and bought a decent dagger. This dagger was small and exquisite. Xiaotong could go back and polish it so that it would be convenient for her to carry around. After buying the dagger, she was about to leave. When she turned around, she saw a lot of cosmetics on the stall opposite. She thought that Gu Panpan was at the age where she loved to look beautiful. As for Xiaotong, she would grow up soon. Should she buy some cosmetics and give them to them? In this day and age, it was already very difficult to survive. Who would still care about cosmetics? Therefore, these things were particularly worthless in the post-apocalyptic world. The total value of the cosmetics in this stall might not even be worth half a kilogram of food. Thinking that it was not expensive anyway, Xiaoqing walked over. As soon as she squatted down, a person squatted down next to her and picked up a small bag with dark seeds in it. How much is this? The stall owner glanced at that person and stretched out 2 fingers. That person nodded and took out 2 level 1 zombie crystals. Xiaoqing couldn't help but facepalm. Which family did this young master come from? It seemed that he was well protected in the post-apocalyptic world. How could he be so stupid? However, she didn't want to remind him. She would be hated for ruining other people's business. Besides, she didn't know this person. Meng Shun gave the crystals to the stall owner. When he picked up the seeds, he was very happy. Most of the seeds were grain crops in the north. They were rarely seen in the south. Now that the post-apocalyptic climate was strange, he wanted to take them back and try planting them. If they could be planted, he could ask the base to buy a lot of seeds back. They would have enough to eat next year. Do you still have such seeds? Yes, of course. The stall owner was also overjoyed. His family grew these things, and he had left behind countless old seeds. Previously, he had been considering whether he should just eat them as food, but today, he had actually gotten himself a sucker for a fool. Now, his head was full of 3 words, I'm rich. Can you take them all? If the quantity is not too much, I'll take them all. Meng Shun turned over the seeds and crushed them. After the skin was broken, the white part exposed was very tender. When he pinched it, it felt moist. After paying attention to the soil and temperature, there should be no problem for them to germinate. The only thing to worry about was whether they could bear fruit. If he took more seeds back, he could test it a few more times. Xiaoqing looked at Meng Shun as if she was looking at an idiot. His appearance was not bad, and his voice was also quite nice. It was a pity that there was something wrong with his brain. I'll go back and get them after I'm done. Xiaoqing picked 2 cosmetics and an eyebrow pencil. How much are these? The stall owner was probably addicted to scamming her, so he stretched out 2 fingers. Xiaoqing narrowed her eyes. Did he think that she was also a brainless idiot? How dare he try to scam her? Wasn't he a bit too bold? The stall owner looked at Xiaoqing's murderous eyes and suddenly realized that Xiaoqing was not Meng Shun. She was wearing the paranormal badge of the base. Was he looking for trouble? Even if Xiaoqing didn't do anything to him, she would ruin Meng Shun's business. It was enough for him to cry. He didn't dare to take revenge. So the stall owner hurriedly said, I don't want any crystal stones. How can I take your crystal stones for these things? Just give me something to eat. Xiaoqing gave him half a pack of compressed biscuits. In fact, she also felt that half a pack was too much, but it was too troublesome to open it. After taking the things, Xiaoqing took one last look at Meng Shun. She couldn't help but sigh. How could a good-looking person be retarded? Sure enough, God opened a window for you and closed the door for you. Meng Shun didn't understand why he was being stared at. In the end, he didn't pay much attention to it. He followed the stall owner to get the seeds. The stall owner closed the stall and stopped doing business. He happily took Meng Shun back to get the seeds. Xiaoqing returned home and gave the seeds to Gu Panpan and Xiao Tong. Then she got a kiss from them. Dai was angry. He pulled Xiao Tong away and pulled Gu Panpan away. He leaned over and kissed Xiaoqing's left cheek and Xiaoqing's right cheek. He was satisfied when he covered the marks left by Gu Panpan and Xiao Tong. Xiaoqing. Chapter 72. After splitting the loot, they went back to their own homes to sleep in satisfaction. On the other side, They had just found some clues. Yin Pingshan flipped through the list again and again, and then muttered with a little doubt. This whatever Baby Ming metahuman team doesn't even have a single dead person? I took a look at this name list. There are people in their teens and a few years old. If I didn't know beforehand that they were a team of metahumans, I would have thought that they were more like square dancers. Mengshan stood at the side and didn't say a word. In the afternoon, he brought back a bunch of seeds, and then he was scolded by Yin Pingshan. This bunch of seeds couldn't even be used on a single zombie crystal nucleus, but Meng Shan had used more than 10 of them. Even if his family was rich, he couldn't afford to lose like this. Yin Pingshan was so angry that he cried out in pain, holding his chest for the entire afternoon. However, Meng Shan just looked at him with an especially innocent gaze, as if he had done something unforgivable. Yin Pingshan was even angrier. He shouldn't have brought Meng Shan out this time. If he didn't bring Meng Shan out, he wouldn't have been angered to death more than 10 times along the way. If he didn't bring Meng Shan out, he might have been a little more clear-headed. If he didn't bring Meng Shan out, he wouldn't have lost so many crystals. In the end, looking at Meng Shan's calm and innocent expression, Yin Pingshan almost couldn't catch his breath and passed out just like that. Fortunately, at this time, he found the information about Baby Ming and the Fierce Wind metahuman team, which distracted Yin Pingshan's attention. The information was very clear. When they received the mission, Baby Ming's team was just a metahuman team that had been established for less than 24 hours. As for the Fierce Wind metahuman team, it was the oldest and one of the highest-level metahuman teams in this base. But in the end, as a newly formed Level 1 metahuman team, Baby Ming's metahuman team did not lose a single member, not even a single injured member. As for the Gale metahuman team, only the captain and vice-captain were left. One of them was unconscious, and the other one was heavily injured. Who would believe that? Yin Pingshan concluded at that time. This team of mutants called Baby Ming is really something. It's definitely not simple. I think it's very likely that they were the ones who found the information. It was unknown when Meng Shan had appeared behind Yin Pingshan. Then, he pointed at the information in Yin Pingshan's hands and said, I know this woman. I saw her today. Yin Pingshan followed his finger and saw that Meng Shan was pointing at Xiaoqing, the leader of Baby Meng Shan's team. His eyes lit up. You know her? I saw her when I went shopping today. Meng Shan said with certainty. Because Xiaoqing was very beautiful, even for someone like him who put all his heart and soul into research, he could not help but take a few more glances at her. At the mention of shopping, Yin Pingshan's face darkened. He decisively stuffed the information into Meng Shan's hands and said, Since you've seen her, then it's easy. Take the information and take a good look at it. I'll leave the matter of getting close to her to you. And I heard that she's a widow. Meng Shan did not understand what Yin Pingshan was implying at all. When he was holding the information, he was still at a loss. Then, Yin Pingshan ran away, leaving him standing there in a daze. After a long time, Meng Shan finally reacted. He opened the information and found the one with Xiaoqing's picture. Then, he looked at Xiaoqing's information and slowly said, Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing sneezed. Then, she was surprised that as a zombie, she actually had the prelude to a cold. Then, she stuffed her son into Air Dai's arms and began to absorb the Level 4 zombie nucleus. She removed all distracting thoughts from her mind and began to slowly absorb the energy from the zombie nuclei. The energy slowly flowed into her body. She could vaguely feel that after the energy had made a circle in her body, it would all enter her head, which was where the nucleus was located. Usually, when she used her superpower, the energy was released from the nucleus and then flowed around her body. Xiaoqing thought that it was probably because the nucleus absorbed the energy of other nuclei, and then it would slowly fill up. When it reached a certain level, the nucleus would be full, and then it would be upgraded. The nucleus would become bigger, and then it would hold more energy. The process of becoming stronger was to expand the size of the nucleus. The bigger the nucleus, the more energy it could hold, so it would be stronger. At least, it should be like that for superpowered people. As for zombies, they seem to be able to absorb energy from flesh and blood to evolve. Just like the variety of superpowered people, zombies also had different variations. Similarly, both superpowered people and zombies were constantly becoming stronger. Xiaoqing suddenly had an idea. What if she used the absorbed energy to strengthen her body? After all, every time when she was on the verge of upgrading, she would be stuck. There would be a long period of time when she was on the verge of a breakthrough, but she could not break through. At that time, would it be better to use the absorbed energy to strengthen her body? After all, when she was on the verge of a breakthrough, most of the absorbed energy couldn't be contained by the nucleus. It would either be used or scattered, which was very wasteful. Only a small part of it would be used to slowly expand the capacity of the nucleus. This idea went round and round in Xiaoqing's mind, and it kept tempting her. In the end, Xiaoqing decided to give it a try. She didn't use the level 4 nucleus stone, but took out a level 1 zombie nucleus stone. She tried to absorb it into her body, but the energy involuntarily circulated in her body, and then it entered the nucleus in her head. Xiaoqing tried several times, but the result was the same. The energy would enter the nucleus by itself. She suddenly felt a little discouraged. She even considered if she should first absorb the level 4 nucleus stone to see if she could reach the edge of a breakthrough, and then try again. Would it be easier that way? But she gave up and decided to try a few more times. After absorbing dozens of level 1 zombie nucleus stones, Xiaoqing had a little grasp of the rhythm. She thought for a moment. When the energy was transferred out of the nucleus, it would be obedient to her, but when it was just absorbed into her body, it was not obedient at all. The reason was very likely that after the energy entered her nucleus, it would be assimilated and then imprinted with her spirit mark. Spirit was an illusory thing. Only psychic paranormals like Xiao Tong could truly control it. Xiaoqing tried again and again, but failed again and again. When the sky was about to turn white, she felt her spirit power for the first time. This was already a big progress. Xiaoqing breathed a sigh of relief. She took out the level 4 nucleus stone and absorbed it for a while, preparing to wait until night to fight again. Chapter 73. By the time Xiaoqing finished packing, it was already dawn. She yawned and prepared to set up her stall. She had harvested too many things in the past 2 days, so it was better to sell them. She would feel more at ease if she exchanged them for zombie nuclei. In addition, she was going to buy some higher-level zombie nuclei. Regardless of whether they came to sell or not, she would still get some. Anyway, she didn't lack food now, and there weren't many people in her family who ate food. She only had Xiao Tong and half a little bun, so she might as well use them to exchange for some nuclei. Xiaoqing first went to find Yin Hanqing and asked Yin Hanqing to take care of her family. Then, she went to set up her stall. The good spots in the stall had been taken by others. Xiaoqing didn't mind. She found a corner, set up her stall, and began to absorb the crystals and improve her spiritual power. When it was almost noon, Xiaoqing suddenly noticed that someone stopped in front of her stall. Xiaoqing opened her eyes and found that the person squatting in front of her stall was none other than the stupid rich guy she met yesterday. Xiaoqing immediately perked up, and 4 words immediately appeared in her mind. Too much money makes people stupid. Thinking of this, her expression immediately became much gentler. Is there anything you need? You can take a look. I have quite a lot of things here. Meng Shun was a little embarrassed by Xiaoqing's gentle look. He flipped through the things in the stall, but his mind was thinking about how to strike up a conversation with Xiaoqing. If he suddenly said that he wanted to get to know her, would it make her think that he was a hooligan? What if Xiaoqing rejected him? What if Xiaoqing thought that he wasn't a good person and was wary of him? Meng Shun thought a lot. His hands unconsciously turned over, and then he felt that he had caught something. He looked down and found that he was holding Xiaoqing's foot. Meng Shun, Xiaoqing. Meng Shun quickly loosened his grip. I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. I was distracted. Xiaoqing silently withdrew her foot. Her face suddenly changed from gentle to expressionless. Is there anything you like? Meng Shun saw the look on her face that said, if you don't have it, hurry up and leave. He really wanted to apologize, but after thinking for a long time, he picked up something and said, yes. He didn't know why, but when he was in front of Xiaoqing, he was obviously sharp-tongued and knew how to talk. But when he was in front of Xiaoqing, he couldn't wait to spit out word by word. The moment he picked it up, Meng Shun regretted it, because it was an unopened pack of sanitary pads. Xiaoqing's heart collapsed. She had met a pervert. Actually, Meng Shun was here to flirt with her, right? Meng Shan subconsciously loosened his grip, but in the next second, he took the thing back and said in a very sincere tone, "I bought it for my friend." Xiaoqing silently stretched out a finger. Meng Shan took out a crystal and gave it to Xiaoqing. Sure enough, in his mind, crystals were like steel bulbs. They were priced at the same time. Xiaoqing, who originally wanted to chase him away, silently restrained herself. However, in her heart, she had already equated Meng Shan with a pervert. Meng Shan picked a few more things that he was really interested in. Then, he tried to chat with Xiaoqing. "Your name is Xiaoqing, right? It's a very nice name." Xiaoqing smiled slightly, but in her heart, she thought, "Damn, he is really a pervert. He actually investigated my name." Meng Shan said again, "My name is Meng Shan, not Meng Shan. Meng is Meng, and Shan is Shan." Xiaoqing, who didn't want to know his name, smiled slightly. Meng Shan was a little dispirited. He had lived in the laboratory for a long time. Although his IQ was high, his EQ was extremely low. He was the worst at dealing with people. Seeing that Xiaoqing obviously didn't want to communicate with him, Meng Shan couldn't help but feel a little discouraged. Fortunately, he was a very tenacious person. Soon, he cheered up. "I saw your badge. Are you also a psychic?" Xiaoqing nodded. "I'm a wood psychic." Meng Shan dryly tried to find a topic. "What a coincidence. I'm a spirit psychic." Xiaoqing couldn't help but twitch the corner of her mouth. If it was another psychic, she might really not want to talk to Meng Shan. Unfortunately, Meng Shan was a spirit psychic. Xiaotong was also a spiritual-type metahuman, and spiritual-type metahumans were as rare as lightning-type metahumans. Xiaoqing didn't have anything to help Xiaotong, but now she had met another spiritual-type metahuman. Xiaoqing, who had been cold, immediately became interested. "You're a spirit psychic?"
Yes.
Meng Shan smiled slightly. He had relatively few expressions and smiles, but when he smiled, he was particularly good-looking. His whole face glowed with a very attractive brilliance, especially his slightly curved phoenix eyes. Even Xiaoqing was stunned for a moment. But soon, Meng Shan's smile disappeared, and he returned to his serious and somewhat abstinent appearance. Xiaoqing couldn't help but say, "I have a companion who's also a spirit psychic. What a coincidence." Meng Shan was also interested. There are very few spirit psychics. It's fate to meet one. Spirit psychics aren't easy to grasp and control. It's one of the more difficult types of psychics. I seem to have said a lot of nonsense. No, I like to hear it. Do you have any tricks? Xiaoqing smiled gently. Meng Shan immediately felt that he seemed to have a chance to strike up a conversation with Xiaoqing. He hurriedly revealed the way he practiced his spirit power. "I often use my spirit power to try to pick up some things. At first, I start with small things like bowls and chopsticks. Then I slowly try to pick up bigger things. It's very useful for the growth of spirit power." "Thank you." Xiaoqing wrote it down and returned a smile. Then she got some information about spirit power from Meng Shan. For example, spirit power was very strong, but at the same time, it was also very fragile. Once overdrawn or seriously injured, it was easy to become mentally retarded. Therefore, when spirit psychics were relatively weak, they had to be protected as much as possible. When they grew to a certain level, they would be somewhat safe. If spirit psychics grew up, they would be very scary. They could kill people and zombies without leaving a trace. When she was almost done, Xiaoqing's face changed. "Do you have anything else to buy?" Meng Shan looked at the pile of things in his hand and then looked at the things on the stall. He silently shook his head. Then he heard Xiaoqing say coldly, "Then why don't you leave?" Meng Shan's heart broke at that moment. No matter how much he said, it couldn't change his image in Xiaoqing's mind. A pervert. Chapter 74. Meng Shan went back gloomily. Yin Pingshan had been waiting for him for a long time. When he saw him, he hurriedly asked, "How was it? Did you get anything?" Meng Shan put a pile of things on the ground, then said with a serious face, "Her name is Xiaoqing." And then, Yin Pingshan waited for a long time, then saw that Meng Shan was still looking at him with a serious face, but didn't want to continue. Meng Shan pointed at the pile of things on the ground, then sat down to drink water. Yin Pingshan was speechless. That is to say, You went out and found out her name, and we knew it long ago. Why did you bring back a pile of junk? Tell me, how many crystal stones did you spend? Yin Pingshan was prepared, but he was still surprised when Mengshan pointed at him. What? 5 crystal stones? You spent 5 crystal stones on this pile of junk? Mengshan said innocently, no, I didn't spend 5. Then, when Yin Pingshan let out a sigh of relief, he said calmly, it's 50. Yin Pingshan sat down on the ground. At that moment, he almost burst into tears. 50 crystal stones. He took the team of paranormals all the way from Jiangbei Survivor Base to S-City Survivor Base. How many crystal stones did he get? 50 crystal stones. What kind of wastrel was this? He couldn't take it out and beat him to death, could he? You spent 50 crystal stones and found out her name? Yin Pingshan asked with a trembling voice. Mengshan looked at Yin Pingshan sitting on the ground, trembling. He couldn't bear it. He thought carefully, then said, she has a companion who is a psychic paranormal. Yin Pingshan propped himself up from the chair and sat down dispiritedly. Did you talk about anything else? Like being friends or something? Mengshan shook his head, then said with a slightly livelier tone, I made an appointment with her tomorrow. She didn't refuse. No one would refuse a sucker who came to their door. Yin Pingshan trembled and covered his heart, then said to himself, last night, how Yin treated me. Why didn't I eat more? At least make up for the loss. Mengshan didn't listen to Yin Pingshan's nagging. He was thinking about his own plan. I think if I talk to her a few more times, we should get familiar. I can feel that she is a very cautious girl, but she is a good person. She is a good girl. Why would she cheat you so many crystal stones if she is a good person? Wake up, young man. She just thinks that you're a fool with a lot of money and are easy to trick. However, Yin Pingshan didn't want to discourage Mengshan. He organized his words, then said, in that case, you can talk to her tomorrow, but don't bring too many crystal stones tomorrow. Promise me, okay? Mengshan nodded, then carried the pile of things into his room. He found a notebook and began to write down the tips of training psychic paranormal. His intuition told him that he could make her like him. Xiaoqing didn't manage to get more than a few high-grade zombie nuclei in one day. After all superpowered people needed to absorb zombie nuclei to evolve, and not many of them would be stupid enough to sell their nuclei. However, she sold a lot of things. Coupled with the income provided by Mengshan, the spendthrift, today was not a bad day. In the afternoon, she packed up and went back early. She and her friends seemed to have formed a tacit understanding that although they lived separately, they would eat together. After all, Yin Hanqing and Xiaoqing's culinary skills weren't bad, much better than Gu Panpan and her sister. Therefore, the two of them would always come over to freeload every meal. Moreover, every time they split the spoils, they would consciously leave behind a portion of the food as their rations and leave it with Xiaoqing. The reward for this mission was very rich. They didn't need to do any missions in a short time. They only needed to rest and cultivate. The more their abilities improved, the safer their next mission would be. Before most of her friends broke through to level 3, Xiaoqing didn't want to go on any big missions. At most, they would take on some simple missions. A moderate amount of fighting was also good for them. However, after the last mission, the higher-ups seemed to value Xiaoqing and the rest more. There was also a level 3 paranormals team called Qi Yin. They found Xiaoqing and wanted to talk to Xiaoqing about merging Baby Meng into Qi Yin. They were directly rejected by Xiaoqing. After dinner, Xiaoqing called Xiaotong over and taught Xiaotong all the knowledge she learned from Mengshan in the day. Xiaotong was mute, but she wasn't stupid. On the contrary, she was actually very smart. It was just that she was injured too much previously, which caused her to be a little slow. After her ability evolved, she was also slowly recovering. After Xiaoqing explained those things to her, she quickly understood and deduced many things from one example. After Xiaotong obtained a new method to train her mental strength, she didn't stop. She kept using her mental strength to lift this and that. Xiaotong actually yearned to become stronger. She didn't want to be protected under Xiaoqing's wings. She hoped that she could help Xiaoqing, even if it was just a little. However, Xiaotong was still relatively weak after all. Soon, her spiritual power was almost exhausted. At this time, she could feel that from the strange crystal hanging around her neck, there was a cool aura slowly entering her body, restoring her spiritual power. On the other side, Xiaoqing also returned to her room. After absorbing the crystal for a while, she suddenly had an idea. Xiaotong and Meng Shan were both psychic paranormals, so they could lift something with their mental strength, but she also had spiritual power. Didn't this mean that, in fact, everyone had the potential to become a psychic? It was just that some people had more spiritual power, while others had less. Those who had more spiritual power had a higher chance of becoming a psychic when they awakened their psychic abilities. If she also trained her mental strength, would she develop a second ability in the future? Xiaoqing was a person who liked to do things immediately. She closed her eyes and meditated for a long time, slowly mobilizing the mental strength that she had spent a long time to feel. Then, she slowly tried to mobilize this mental strength. If Xiaotong's mental strength was a lake, then hers was only a basin of water. Needless to say, the gap between them was naturally obvious. However, under Xiaoqing's control, the crystal in her hand really slowly floated up. However, only lasted for a few seconds, and then the crystal fell back into Xiaoqing's palm. Even with Xiaoqing's physique, she felt as if she was covered in cold sweat, and her head was faintly aching like being pricked by needles. This was the feeling of overdrawing one's mental strength. She suddenly felt very sorry for Xiaotong. Just overdrawing one's mental strength was already so uncomfortable. How painful would it be for Xiaotong to be injured many times? However, Xiaoqing didn't think too much about it. Because of the overdraft of her mental strength, she lay on the bed and soon fell asleep. Chapter 75. The next day, when Xiaoqing went out to set up her stall, she saw Mengshan again. He gave Xiaoqing a booklet. Xiaoqing flipped through it and asked, "What's this?" "My experience on spiritual power cultivation." Mengshan smiled and said, "I organized it into a booklet last night. You can take it back and show it to your companions." "Thank you." Xiaoqing paused for a moment. She didn't know how to react. She originally thought that Meng Shan was a stupid, rich, and strange pervert. However, Meng Shan's behavior made her feel a little embarrassed. "I like your character very much. I want to be friends with you." "You don't have to thank your friends." Meng Shan quickly recalled the booklet Yin Pingshan gave him before he came here. His memory was very good. He memorized that long booklet in a short while. What a strange person. Xiaoqing silently changed the label of Meng Shan from a stupid, rich pervert to a strange pervert. Then, from a strange pervert to a pervert that she could probably get in touch with. Meng Shan said dryly, "There's one more thing. I came from Jiangbei Survivor Base. We're about to return to Jiangbei Survivor Base. I want to invite you. Do you have a team of ability users?" Xiaoqing nodded and said, "My team is just a level 2 ability user team. Moreover, it's just formed not long ago. You'd better think about what you want to invite us to do first." "It's like this. Many of the guards who escorted us here were injured along the way. It might be a little difficult for them to escort us back. Therefore, I want to invite your team to escort us back. You can treat it as a mission. I'll pay you, according to the usual mission of the same level." Meng Shan said carefully, "I can also pay you half of the reward before the mission. The other half will be paid when we arrive at the destination. How about it?" Xiaoqing didn't agree rashly. Instead, she asked, "Why did you choose our team? I believe that you should have investigated in advance. In S-City Survivor Base, there are many powerful ability user teams. There are even 3 level 3 ability user teams. We're just a newly formed level 2 ability user team. If a normal person were to make a choice, they would choose from the 3 level 3 ability user teams, right?" "You're very cautious." He was wearing a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, which covered the sharpness of his eyes and softened his aura. "That's right. I did my research beforehand. My initial choice was one of the 3 level 3 ability user teams. Later, you brought your team and the Storm team back. The Storm team was considered one of the more experienced and powerful ability user teams in your base. However, they were almost completely annihilated, and none of you were missing. Don't talk to me about luck. I don't believe in that. In my opinion, even luck is a part of strength. There's more." Xiaoqing looked at Meng Shan calmly. Perhaps it was because Ming Shun had been trying to wash away his bad image in Xiao Qing's mind, but he had failed. What he said just now changed Xiao Qing's impression of him. He was insightful, attentive, observant, and analytical. If he was strong, he would be rational when he needed to be. He would be a good friend. Ming Shun continued, I have analyzed your operation in detail. It is very difficult to not lose a single person. The requirements for a team leader are also very high. You need to have enough foresight, rationality, decisiveness, and a certain amount of luck. Of course, you must have enough strength and teamwork. I have tried to bring in several top Esper teams from our base, but I found that none of them could guarantee that they could complete the mission without losing a single person. So, I chose you. Is this reason enough? Meng Shun was very smart. He chose to say 80% of the truth and 20% of the lies. This way, it was much harder to expose than a pure lie. Xiao Qing shook her head. Even if I believe that you are sincerely inviting our team, I can't agree. Why? Meng Shun frowned. We can discuss the reward. As you said before, I have enough foresight, rationality, and decisiveness. It is because of this that I choose to refuse. A wise person should learn to give up appropriately. This mission is very difficult. I can't guarantee that I won't lose any of my teammates because of this mission. This is the main reason why I refuse. Xiao Qing was very calm. My team is different from others. All my teammates are my family and the closest people to me. I can't accept losing even one of them. Meng Shun was anxious. Your thinking is very wrong. Do you want to choose a mission that is not dangerous at all in the future? All the paranormals break through their limits in danger and then progress little by little. You are protecting them like this and also preventing them from becoming strong. Xiao Qing didn't explain anything. She just said lightly, I'm a very strong person, so I must protect everyone under my wings. You may think that my decision is not good for their future, but I think that I don't need them to be strong and unstoppable. I just want them to live safely and healthily until the end of the world, or until the end of the world. Meng Shun took a deep breath and couldn't help but say, what if one day, even you can't protect them? If there comes a day when I am unable to protect them, it will definitely be because of my death. Before I die, I will make proper arrangements for everyone. If they are about to be humiliated, I will take the first step and kill them. We will die together. Xiao Qing curled her lips and said with a smile that was not a smile. Meng Shun opened his eyes wide. He had never seen someone like Xiao Qing. You are simply unreasonable. Xiao Qing smiled. Thank you for the compliment. Chapter 76. Yin Hanqing walked out of the kitchen with a big pot of chicken soup. He had a complicated look in his eyes. I stewed chicken for Xiao Tong and the others. Do you want to drink some? The chicken soup should be able to absorb the energy. Xiao Qing shook her head. All the food is useless to me. I have to spit it out after drinking it. It's too troublesome. You guys eat. I'll absorb the crystal stone for a while. When Xiao Qing was about to go in to absorb the crystal stone, Air Dai wanted to follow her. Then, Little Bun grabbed the corner of her clothes. When Xiao Qing closed the door, she saw Little Bun was still scratching Air Dai. Xiao Qing sighed again. She felt that she had sighed away all the anger in her life in the past 2 days. When she sat down to absorb the crystal stone, Xiao Qing was shocked. She was embarrassed and focused all her attention on the outside world. She didn't realize that she was only 1 step away from level 4. What did she do? How did it rise to almost level 4 in just one night? It was as if she had eaten a miracle pill. She inevitably thought of the discordant things last night. After calming down, Xiao Qing put aside those shameful things and began to think about it. To study this, she had to start from the source. First of all, why did Erdai suddenly become like that? Although Erdai was different from ordinary zombies, they had their own consciousness and intelligence. However, their bodies were similar to ordinary zombies. At least in that aspect, they were similar. If there wasn't any special reason, why did he suddenly become like that? This wasn't scientific. Xiao Qing thought carefully. She realized that she had only seen one zombie that was different in this aspect. It was the one that humiliated Cheng Jiao and was later cut into cucumber sauce. Thinking of this, Xiao Qing was suddenly enlightened. Because yesterday, she was still puzzled. She clearly remembered that she had an advanced zombie crystal stone, but she couldn't find it. It was very likely that she had given it to Erdai by accident. Erdai absorbed it without knowing, and that was why last night's incident happened. That was the only possibility. Otherwise, how could Erdai suddenly become like that? Then what happened next was easy to deduce. It was very likely that this crystal caused some kind of mutation in Erdai, and then he became like that. After she and Erdai did that kind of thing, the energy of the crystal went through some kind of transformation, and a part of it entered her body. That zombie should be level 4, which meant that she and Erdai shared a level 4 zombie crystal and some unspeakable energy, which led her to almost reach level 4. This was the most likely possibility. No matter what had happened was in the past. People had to look forward. At least the increase in strength now was a consolation. Xiaoqing used up a lot of energy last night, and it was time for her to replenish her energy. She took out the remaining level 4 zombie crystal stone and then began to absorb it, probably because she used up too much energy last night. When Xiaoqing woke up, the level 4 zombie crystal was almost completely absorbed by her. Xiaoqing could also clearly feel that she was just a little bit away from breaking through. She decided to break through in one go. Soon, the level 4 zombie crystal was completely absorbed by her. Then, Xiaoqing took out a few level 3 zombie crystals and absorbed them all in one go. The energy converged into a flood in her body. Xiaoqing tried to use the method that Meng Shan taught her. She used her spiritual power to guide the energy into the nucleus in her brain. Boom! At that moment, Xiaoqing felt that her mind was like an explosion of fireworks, and then it went blank. After a long time of calmness, Xiaoqing woke up. Chapter 77. Xiaoqing could clearly feel the energy full of vitality flowing out of her crystal nucleus, rushing to her limbs and bones. Wherever the energy passed, her meridians, blood vessels, and muscles seemed to be recovering. At that moment, Xiaoqing firmly believed that as long as she kept leveling up, her body would become like a normal human one day. This was not the thing that made her happiest. What made her happiest was that little Bun would have a chance to become a normal person in the future. Wasn't this what she had been pursuing? After calming down, Xiaoqing went out. It was almost afternoon, but Gu Panpan and the others were sitting on the sofa. As soon as they saw Xiaoqing come out, Erdai came over, followed by Gu Panpan. "Sister, you finally came out? What's wrong?" Xiaoqing tore Erdai off her body. Although Erdai used to like to stick to her, Xiaoqing didn't feel guilty at that time. Now that something really happened, Xiaoqing felt guilty. As soon as Erdai stuck to her, she tore it off. Erdai felt very wronged, but she didn't dare to say anything. Gu Panpan didn't care about this little detail. She just said, "It's like this. Just now, the base sent someone over, saying that they want our team to represent the S-City Survivor Base and escort those people from Jiangbei Survivor Base back." Xiaoqing couldn't help but frown. First, it was Meng Shan, and now it was Yin Pingshan. They couldn't persuade her, but now they wanted to use force? "Did you tell the base that we don't intend to do any missions recently?" Gu Panpan said, "I told you. When we thought about it, we felt that something wasn't right. There are so many teams of ability users in the base, so why did they pick us?" I politely refused. Then that person said that this mission was mandatory and that we had to complete it. However, the reward for the mission was also very generous. Xiaoqing was a little angry. She didn't know what kind of conspiracy Meng Shan and the others had in mind when they tried to force them to take this mission, but it was definitely not a good thing. She wouldn't have stepped into this kind of trap, but someone forced her to step into it. Who would be happy? Did they say anything else?
Xiaoqing asked coldly.
They did. They said that we're representing the base and that we should be friendly to them along the way and show them the strength of our base appropriately. They said that they'll pay us half of the reward first and then give us the other half after we send them over. Gu Panpan huffed. Who cares about their reward? Xiaoqing also had a headache. She sat down and told Gu Panpan and the others what had happened before. Finally, she concluded, "We still want to live in this base, so we can't offend the base. So we have to take this mission. But there is definitely a conspiracy behind it. Everyone should be careful when the time comes. I hope nothing bad will happen." While the entire team of mutants was on high alert, Yin Pingsheng was a little drunk. He reclined on the chair and grumbled to Ming Shan. That Hao Yun is so greedy. He might have already noticed that we've designated Baby Ming as the mutant team. He'll definitely send a second team to keep an eye on us. We'll have to depend on you then. Ming Shan was expressionless. Why rely on me? Aren't you close to that? Xiaoqing? I saw you lying there in the middle of the night writing love letters to her. You didn't want to do it when I asked you to. Yin Pingsheng rolled his eyes and didn't care about his image at all. Actually, you must be very happy deep down. Widows and whatnot are the most interesting things. I always thought that you were frigid, but now I know that you're actually horny on the inside. Chapter 78. Get lost. Meng Xin glared at Yin Pingsheng coldly. He didn't explain what he had stayed up all night to write. When he thought of this, he felt a little sad. He had written until midnight before his expression looked slightly better. Yin Pingsheng muttered a few more words before saying, "You're lying. I'm going to sleep first." Meng Xin tugged at his collar. He couldn't help but think of Xiaoqing. She was the most unique woman he had ever seen. The next day, Yin Pingsheng went directly to Xiaoqing's place to discuss the upcoming mission. When he arrived, it happened to be dinner time at Xiaoqing's place. Yin Hanqing had just finished cooking, and Gu Panpan and the others were walking out of the kitchen, each carrying a plate. A rich aroma wafted through the air. Yin Pingsheng's nose twitched, and his eyes were glued to the dishes on the table. They seemed delicious. I just finished cooking. Do you want to eat together? Xiaoqing smiled slightly and said politely. Yin Pingsheng felt that he should decline first to show that he was reserved. Then, when Xiaoqing invited him again, he could pretend that he reluctantly agreed because of Xiaoqing's hospitality. That would make him look more dignified. Thus, Yin Pingsheng waved his hand and said, "How can I accept that? I've already eaten. You guys can eat." Xiaoqing nodded and said, "Then we'll eat first. I'll go get you a glass of water." Yin Pingsheng was speechless. This wasn't the script. He looked at the plain water in front of him and then at the family eating happily. If he could turn back time, Yin Pingsheng would definitely go back to just a moment ago and then shamelessly say, "That's great. It just so happens that I haven't eaten either." This was probably what it meant to be unsuccessfully pretentious. While Yin Hanqing and the others were eating, Xiaoqing walked over to Yin Pingsheng with a glass of water. "May I know what brings you here?" Yin Pingsheng collected his thoughts and said seriously, "Of course, I want to talk to you about the next escort mission. I have to apologize to you first. I mentioned to S-City Base that we were short of manpower and wanted to borrow some people from S-City Survivor Base. Then, I mentioned you guys by the way. I didn't talk to you in advance and rashly proposed to choose you guys. It's my fault. Please forgive me." Xiaoqing's heart was naturally full of anger, but she couldn't show it on the surface. That was why she deliberately made Yin Pingsheng suffer in these small matters. She said lightly, "It's our honor to have you take a fancy to our team. I don't know when we will set off, and what kind of mission will we have. We will start the return journey tomorrow afternoon. You don't need to do too much. Just protect us along the way." Yin Pingsheng quickly took out a small bag and poured the things inside on the table. "This is the promised reward. I will send the other part in the afternoon." On the table were the 10 level 3 zombie nuclei that Yin Pingsheng had promised before. These nuclei were placed on the table, which slightly reduced Xiaoqing's anger. She glanced at them and nodded. "Will we meet at the square tomorrow afternoon? We will be there on time." "Yes, 1 o'clock. Yin Pingsheng forced himself not to look at the table, but the smell of the food seemed to be against him, constantly drilling into his nose. Yin Hanqing's cooking was not for show. The smell made Yin Pingsheng's mouth almost drool, but he had to pretend to be calm. "Is there anything else?" Xiaoqing's meaning was very clear. If there was nothing else, he should leave. Don't delay their meal. Chapter 79. Hearing that, Yin Pingsheng didn't want to stay any longer, so he got up and said, "I don't have anything else to say. I'll go back now. I won't disturb you guys from eating." Xiaoqing didn't even want to see him off. She just watched him leave alone. After Yin Pingsheng left, Xiaoqing picked up the zombie nuclei one by one and checked them with her weak spirit power. Every zombie nucleus was full of energy, so it wasn't fake. Everyone, hurry up and eat. Once we're done, I'll divide these zombie crystal nuclei. Let's work hard tonight, and try to have a few level 3 superpowered people by tomorrow's mission, Xiaoqing said while checking if there were any zombie crystal nuclei that had undergone special evolution. The few people over there finished their meal in silence. Then, Yin Hanqing was responsible for cleaning up the dishes and the others sat over. Now, Gu Panpan and Gu Chuan were both at the peak of level 2. They were only one step away from level 3. After absorbing level 3 zombie nuclei, the possibility of them breaking through was very high. Although Yin Hanqing got his superpower late, he had also reached level 2. He was only a little bit weaker than Gu Chuan and his sister, so the possibility of him breaking through was also very high. Dumbo 2. Ahem. After experiencing the relatively peaceful thing last night, he was now at level 3. Xiao Tong's superpower was the rarest. She was also the weakest one among them. In addition, spirit power didn't evolve purely by absorbing energy, so the possibility of her breaking through was slightly smaller. Even Little Bun had reached level 2 with the support of snacks every day and night. However, Little Bun didn't have any attack power, so his fighting power was almost negligible. After thinking about it, Xiaoqing gave Air Dai a level 3 zombie nucleus to consolidate his realm after absorbing it. Then she gave Gu Panpan 2. Gu Panpan was a super-powered person with strength and body, so it was easy for her to evolve. 2 nuclei should be enough for her to reach level 3. He then gave Xiao Tong another piece and told her to absorb it and accumulate energy. If Xiao Tong wanted to break through, the key was still the strange crystal core hanging around her neck. Gu Chuan and Yin Hanqing each got 3 nuclei. Xiaoqing told them not to save any crystals. Zombie nuclei were meant to be absorbed. She told them to be sure to reach level 3 before tomorrow. This way, when everyone went out on a mission together, they would be more secure. 10 crystals were distributed like this. Then the group was driven away by Xiaoqing for closed-door training. After they all left, Little Bun crawled up to Xiaoqing's lap. He stared at Xiaoqing with his big round eyes and asked, "Is Dai Dai my new daddy?" Xiaoqing almost couldn't hold it in and stood up from the sofa. She choked and stared with her eyes wide open. "Baby, what did you say?" Little Bun hugged Xiaoqing's waist with grievance and whispered, "Mama's whole body is full of Dai Dai's smell. Mama also sleeps with Dai Dai." Xiaoqing's face was as red as a monkey's butt. Being told by her own son like this was simply shameful play. She wanted to find a hole to hide in. Little Bun lay in Xiaoqing's arms and stuck out his little butt. He said with a sobbing voice, "The book said that if there is a stepfather, there will be a stepmother. Then Mama will give birth to a baby and don't want me anymore. Is it true?" Xiaoqing immediately felt distressed. She picked up Little Bun and kissed his face. "Baby, I won't have a second baby in my life. You are my one and only. I don't want anyone but you." The Little Bun pouted and reached out to wrap his arms around Xiaoqing's neck, whispering, "But Mama doesn't like Bao Bao anymore. Mama is so busy and doesn't sleep with Bao Bao anymore. I sleep with Tong Tong and play with Tong Tong. Mama doesn't talk to me much either." Chapter 80. From afar, she saw some familiar faces there. These familiar faces were none other than the Blazing Flame ability user team that wanted to merge Baby Meng into their ability user team back then. In the base, Jian ranked slightly higher than Fierce Wind, especially after Fierce Wind lost 6 or 7 members. Jian's captain was a fire paranormal, so the name of the paranormal team was based on the captain's special ability. Qi Yin was also the only third-level ability user team with a female captain. Qi Yan's captain was called Yin Ru. Back then, she had taken a fancy to Xiaoqing's ability and wanted to merge Baby Meng into their team. When the two teams stood together, the style was especially different. Everyone on Yin Ruru's team was fully equipped with weapons, looking especially stylish. On Xiaoqing's side, the captain was carrying the child, and there were 2 others who looked underage. Yin Hanqing was also carrying a bottle of soy sauce that he bought when he passed by the market. At first glance, it exuded a strong rustic aura. It was very down-to-earth. Anyway, the style of the 2 teams was completely different. Yin Ruru and Cheng Jiao were somewhat similar. The difference was that Yin Ruru was more imposing, and it was obvious that she had a fiery temper. Yin Ruru couldn't help but twitch her mouth. Why did you bring the child out? Xiao Qing scratched Little Bun's chin. Call me auntie. Little Bun blinked his big eyes and gave a cute smile to Yin Ruru. Hello, auntie. Yin Ruru's handsome face softened. So obedient. Xiao Qing said very seriously, I don't feel at ease leaving my son anywhere, so it's better to bring him along. Yin Ruru lowered her voice and said, but it's so dangerous outside. Why don't you hire someone to take care of him? There are many missions for ordinary people in the mission hall. If you're worried, I can introduce you to 2 more reliable ones. Xiao Qing shook her head. It's a little dangerous, but I'm not worried. If he's not in front of me, I won't feel at ease doing missions outside. More importantly, if I die, there will be no one to take care of him in the future. It's better for him to stay by my side and live and die together. Yin Ruru patted Xiao Qing's shoulder and didn't say anything else. She just said, don't affect the team. Xiao Qing nodded. At this time, Yin Pingshan's people came over. Yin Pingshan had mutants too, but some of them were injured on the way here and hadn't recovered yet. This was one of the reasons why they needed a team of mutants. 2 captains, nice to meet you. Yin Pingshan smiled and reached out his hand to shake hands with Xiao Qing and Yin Ruru. He was very gentlemanly when he was serious. Mengshan also came over and shook hands with Xiao Qing. He slightly raised the corner of his mouth, and the curve of his smile was almost non-existent. I'm very happy that you agreed. Xiao Qing wanted to complain. If it weren't for the mandatory mission of the base, she would never have agreed to this mission. It was such a long road from S-City to Jiangbei Survivor Base. No one knew what would happen along the way. The danger and unpredictability were too high. Although she was disgusted, Xiao Qing's expression didn't change. She shook hands with Mengshan. Then the captain of the mutant team in Jiangbei Survivor Base came over and asked, when are we leaving? The captain of the mutant team in Jiangbei was the only male captain of the 3 mutant teams. He looked very steady, so he should be a reliable person. We're leaving right away. Yin Pingshan waved his hand and then asked Xiao Qing with a smile, Captain Xiao, do you want to take our car? We can also catch up. Chapter 81. The corner of Xiao Qing's mouth twitched, and she decisively refused. Who wants to talk about old times with you? Yin Pingshan expressed his regret, but he didn't stop her. He knew that forcing Xiao Qing's team to carry out this mission had already made Xiao Qing very unhappy. Now was the time to increase her favorability. If he continued to pester her, her favorability would probably be infinitely negative. The first to leave the base was the Blaze Paranormal Team's vehicle, followed by the people from Jiangbei Survivor Base, and finally Xiao Qing's team. There were many vehicles transporting supplies in the Jiangbei Survivor Base. They were all covered with large tarpaulins, so they couldn't see what was inside. However, it was easy to understand that they must be trading goods with S-City's Survivor Base. Jiangbei Survivor Base was a little bigger than S-City's Survivor Base in terms of size, and the number of people inside was also a little more. Moreover, Jiangbei Survivor Base was backed by a very long and wide river. The zombies on the other side of the river couldn't cross over, so it was a little safer than S-City's Survivor Base in terms of safety. However, after the apocalypse, the climate there was worse than here, so it was very difficult to grow vegetables in season. In this area, Jiangbei Survivor Base was inferior to S-City's Survivor Base. When it was time for lunch, although they gathered together, they ate separately. Everyone started to cook. They simply cooked a pot of dry food, while Xiao Qing's team had already divided the work of cooking and cooking. In fact, they didn't cook any complicated dishes. They just brought some cold rice, fried it with eggs and vegetables, and then steamed it. However, nothing was afraid of comparison. The moment Yin Pingshan smelled the aroma, he raised his head and looked at Xiao Qing's side. Golden eggs wrapped in rice, green vegetables, and thin slices of bacon. Then he looked at his own side. A pot of dry food was cooked like dog food, and there were small salted vegetables on the side. This was today's lunch. The gap between them shouldn't be too big. While Yin Pingshan was hesitating, Yin Ruru had already moved quickly to sit beside Xiao Qing and began to curry favor with her. Do you always bring such rich ingredients when you go out? Children can't lack nutrition. Xiao Qing smiled and filled a bowl for Yin Ruru. She had a good impression of Yin Ruru. Yin Ruru was not pretentious. She took it and thanked her. Yin Pingshan immediately bit his chopsticks and fell into a cycle of sobbing. He also wanted to eat. Sob, sob, sob. Why was the difference in treatment so big? Sob, sob, sob. If he went over now, would he be able to get a bowl? Sob, sob, sob. If Xiao Qing didn't give it to him, would it be embarrassing? Sob, sob, sob. When he finished crying, he found that Meng Shan had already sat down. Meng Shan was very direct. Can you give me a bowl? A small bowl is fine. Since Meng Shan had spoken, and he had helped Xiao Qing would naturally give him face, so she also filled a bowl for him. Fortunately, she made a little more, or it would not be enough. Yin Pingshan did not cry. He ran over with the bowl and looked at Xiao Qing with shining eyes. I also want to eat. Xiao Qing was particularly rude to Yin Pingshan. Yin Pingshan did not help her, and he was the culprit who caused her to have to go on a mission. Why should she be nice to him? Xiao Qing calmly distributed all the rice in the pot to Meng Shan and the others evenly. Everyone's bowl was piled up with a tip. After doing all this, Xiao Qing showed the empty pot to Yin Pingshan. Look, there's no more. Yin Pingshan held an empty bowl and felt particularly miserable, especially when he saw Yin Ruru and Meng Shan holding the bowls and looking at him with mocking eyes while eating. Yin Pingshan was particularly sad. Putting aside Yin Ruru, he and Meng Shan were in the same group. Why was the treatment different? Chapter 82. Was it because Meng Shan had spent the entire night writing love letters? Was it too late for him to write them now? Xiao Qing couldn't bear to see Yin Pingshan's miserable state. She said softly, "Do you want my bowl?" Yin Pingshan couldn't take away a girl's lunch. He swallowed a mouthful of blood and said softly, "No, I'm already full. No, I want to eat. I want to eat. I don't want to eat that pot of dog food." QAQO. Xiao Qing gave him a knowing look. Then, she passed the bowl to Meng Shan. "If he doesn't want to eat it, you can eat it. I'm full anyway." Meng Shan quickly put the rice in the bowl into his own bowl. Then, he smiled at Xiao Qing. "Thank you." Yin Pingshan immediately knelt down. Xiao Qing was definitely targeting him. Definitely. Yin Pingshan felt very wronged, especially when he was compared to Meng Shan. He sat back in his seat and looked at the dog food in the pot. Then, he looked at Meng Shan, who was so happy that he almost buried his face in the bowl. He felt even more unbalanced. Brother Yin. Fatty, who was cooking, scooped a bowl of rice for Yin Pingshan and paired it with a small green pickled cucumber. He looked at him with pity and said, "Eat first." If there was no comparison, it wouldn't hurt. After all, they usually ate this kind of dry food when they went out. However, the comparison was right in front of him. Yin Pingshan really couldn't eat. Every time he took a bite, he felt a little more tears in his heart. Compared to Meng Shan, who liked to speak ill of him, Xiao Qing was really more ruthless. While eating, he thought fiercely, Meng Shan and Xiao Qing are really a match made in heaven. After eating, they took a short rest and continued to move forward. Before nightfall, they had to pass through the empty town in front of them. There were no people in these towns. They were all zombies. If they were still in the town before nightfall, it was very likely that they would be attacked at night. It was very troublesome. After passing the town, there were no zombies in the short distance, so it was relatively safe. These experiences were slowly accumulated after the apocalypse. People had sacrificed a lot of blood and lives. Every experience could save a life. The road ahead is blocked. While walking, the leader of the blazing team sent a message. The team could only stop where they were. Xiao Qing asked her friends to look after the car, and then walked over with the clingy air dye and Xiao Bao. Yin Pingshan and the others were already waiting there. They didn't know why, but there were big cracks in the ground. It was probably because of the earthquake. Each crack was 5 or 6 meters wide, and the narrower ones were more than a meter. The vehicles certainly couldn't pass through. Yin Pingshan and the others' faces couldn't help but become ugly. When they came here, the road was pretty good. They didn't expect that it would become like this when they went back. More importantly, this was the safest road. No matter which way they went, it was inevitable that they would pass through a lot of zombies. The loss of people was certain. What should we do? Yin Ruru also frowned. Should we take a detour? She looked at the length of the cracks. It was impossible to go through from the edge. We can't take a detour. Yin Pingshan clenched his teeth. If we take a detour from the left, we will be on the highway. There are a lot of abandoned vehicles on the highway. Even if we ignore the zombies, it will be very troublesome to go forward. If we take a detour from the highway, we will be in the city. It is too dangerous to go through the city. If we take a detour from the right, it will be a wetland. It is very likely that there will be swamps and a lot of mutant plants. There will be no way to get through it. Yin Ruru couldn't help but say, but we can't go through it. If we don't take a detour, how can the vehicles pass through this huge crack? Not to mention the vehicles. Even if we abandon the vehicles, it will be difficult to go through. Meng Shen squatted on the ground to check. The crack was very deep, so deep that he couldn't see the bottom. He took a stone and threw it down. There was the sound of the stone hitting the ground, but there was no sound of the stone falling. It was impossible to fill the crack, so they had to think of another way. Maybe we can let the Earth ability users create a road. Meng Shen thought for a long time and then said, how do we create it? Yin Pingshan's eyes lit up, and then he said. Meng Shen said seriously, this section is at most 100 meters wide, and there is solid ground in the middle. We only need to build a road above the crack, like a bridge, to support the vehicles. Yin Pingshan and Yin Ruru also thought that this method was feasible, so they each called 2 Earth ability users. They called the Earth ability users with the highest level in their respective teams, one at the peak of level 3 and one at the peak of level 2. Yin Pingshan told them about Meng Shen's idea and then said, can you build a bridge? It is about 2 meters wide, and it doesn't need to be very thick, as long as our vehicles can pass through it. We can try. One of the Earth ability users squatted down, put his palms on the ground, and urged his ability. Soon, the rolling soil seemed to be controlled by an invisible hand, and a 2-meter-wide bridge was formed, crossing the crack. Yin Pingshan was very surprised and hurriedly said, call a car to try first. Wind ability users, get ready. If the bridge collapses, please hold the car with all your strength, and then the strength ability users will be responsible for dragging the car up. As soon as Yin Pingshan gave the order, people on both sides immediately got busy. When everyone was ready, the off-road vehicle with high hopes slowly drove onto the bridge. Under everyone's nervous gaze, the car crossed the bridge and then reversed back, and the earthen bridge did not collapse. Everyone couldn't help cheering, but Yin Pingshan saw Xiaoqing, who hadn't said a word from beginning to end. She frowned and looked dignified. Yin Pingshan couldn't help but stimulate her. Captain Xiao, do you think there is any problem? Xiaoqing pointed at the cracks in front of them and asked the 2 Earth-attributed superpowered men, build a bridge all the way across and maintain it until all the off-road vehicles have passed through. Can you 2 do it? The scene suddenly became cold, including Yin Pingshan's heart. They seemed to have forgotten that the abilities of the ability users were limited, and when they ran out, they would run out. Chapter 83. The 2 paranormals looked at each other in silence. They couldn't do it. Let alone the 2 of them. Even if all the Earth paranormals on the scene were pulled out, they still wouldn't be able to do it. Do you want us to go through one by one? After sending 1 car with all our strength, you guys can rest for a day and a half before sending the second car? Xiaoqing said lightly. Yin Pingshan was silent for a long time. Then he asked Xiaoqing, do you have any other ideas? Xiaoqing shook her head. Apart from taking a detour, building a bridge is the only way. Isn't that still nonsense? Building a bridge is the only way. They can't support all the cars. It's still a dead end. Yin Pingshan said with some annoyance. Xiaoqing didn't say anything. She looked at the long crack and suddenly asked, how much loss will there be if we take a detour? Meng Shen said sincerely, about 1/3 of the people will be left behind. They won't be able to reach the Jiangbei survivor base. This is just a rough estimate. It doesn't count as an accident. Xiaoqing hesitated for a short time, then she called Gu Chuan over, build an ice bridge. It doesn't need to be too thick. It's enough to cross the crack. It's about 2 meters wide. It's thick enough to support a fully loaded car. Gu Chuan silently stretched out his hand. The moisture in the air was quickly extracted, and an ice bridge appeared above the crack. Xiao Qing tested the thickness, then said, "Let's try again." Yin Pingshan called the car and tried again. The car went on the bridge, and there was no sign of the ice bridge below cracking. Yin Pingshan's eyes immediately lit up. After the two Earth paranormals built the ice bridge, their faces became much paler. Gu Chuan, on the other hand, looked very calm. The difference between the two sides was obvious. "Can you hold on until all the cracks are covered?" Yin Pingshan couldn't help but ask. Gu Chuan shook his head. If he was a 4th-level ice paranormal, he could definitely do it, but he was only a 3rd-level paranormal. Yin Pingshan was a little disappointed, but Xiao Qing ignored him. She just asked Gu Chuan, "Can you reach 2/3 of the crack?" Gu Chuan nodded. He could reach that part of the crack, but he would be tired. "That's good." Xiao Qing nodded and said to Yin Pingshan, "Gu Chuan and me, you guys get ready to cross the bridge."
But
Yin Pingshan couldn't help but want to ask, wasn't Gu Chuan unable to hold on? Then he saw that Gu Chuan had already built the ice bridge. While Gu Chuan was building the ice bridge, the other two Earth paranormals didn't stay idle. Xiao Qing asked them to build a thin layer of ice bridge. Then Gu Chuan froze this layer of ice bridge and then thickened it. This saved him a lot of energy. Seeing that Gu Chuan and the others had already started, Yin Pingshan also ordered everyone to get in the cars and drive them one by one in an orderly manner. Xiao Qing and Gu Chuan were in the front. Every time a layer of ice bridge was laid, Xiao Qing would press it to test it and then continue to lay it down. After about 50 meters, several Earth paranormals had already taken turns to lay down the ice bridge. Their energy had already been exhausted. Gu Chuan had to do it himself and completely built the ice bridge. At this time, the strength of a level 3 paranormals could be seen. His face was a little pale, but he didn't look like he had consumed a lot of energy. "Can you still hold on?" Xiao Qing tried, and now the ice bridge was obviously thinner than before. This wasn't because Gu Chuan was lazy, but because his energy was slowly being exhausted, and he didn't have the strength to continue. "It's barely the position you mentioned." Gu Chuan was very calm, but cold sweat was already seeping out of his forehead. Chapter 84. Just tell me when you're at your limit. Don't force yourself. Xiao Qing patted him on the shoulder and looked forward. There were only a few dozen meters left before they crossed the crevice. Gu Chuan nodded, but he still held on until his superpower was exhausted. Then, he sat down on the ground. Yin Pingshan became anxious when he stopped. The whole team was still on the ice, but Gu Chuan could no longer hold on. By the time Gu Chuan recovered, the ice bridge had already melted, and the whole team had fallen into the crevice. Before Yin Pingshan could ask, he saw Xiao Qing help Gu Chuan up. Then, she stretched out her right hand, and countless vines flew out. The vines were very flexible. They weaved themselves into the shape of a carpet in midair. Then, everyone saw a scene that made their jaws drop. The carpet, made of vines, fell down. Many tentacle-like vines stretched out from both ends, and like chopsticks piercing into tofu, they easily pierced into the soil on both sides of the crevice. When they tightened, they turned into a green bridge. Everyone was shocked. Most of them couldn't believe it. How could vines support such heavy off-road vehicles? Especially the off-road vehicles in the middle. They were all full of things. Xiao Qing had already helped Gu Chuan move forward. Yin Pingshan gritted his teeth and ordered, "Go forward." They couldn't stop halfway. The driver drove forward with trepidation. To everyone's surprise, the vines were very tough. Walking on them was like walking on solid ground. Only a slight dent under the tires told them that the vines were soft. After Xiao Qing walked past all the cracks, she turned around and saw the sunlight refracted by the ice and patches of tender green. She heaved a sigh of relief and helped Gu Chuan sit down. If there was a second choice, Xiao Qing definitely wouldn't let Gu Chuan do it. First, it would be too tiring. Second, it would expose their strength. The taboo thing for people was to be completely seen through by others. Xiao Qing was worried about that. However, compared to the huge loss of manpower and uncertainties, exposing one's strength was nothing. When all the cars passed through the crevice, Xiao Qing waved her hand gently. The vines turned into energy and returned to her body. This was the difference between her and other superpowered people. Other people's superpowers were used, but she could take them back. Although it was inevitable that she would consume some of her power during the process, compared to other people, she would consume less. This small difference might save her life in some life-or-death situations. Yin Pingshan had mixed feelings. When he and Ming Shun went to persuade Xiaoqing, they mentioned many times that they were interested in the strength of Xiaoqing's team. However, in fact, Yin Pingshan didn't care much about that. After all, he had seen the top superpowered people in the base, so his vision was much higher. In his opinion, Xiaoqing's team was at most a little stronger than other teams. The fact was that Gu Chuan's strength was already around level 3. Then, what about Xiaoqing, the team leader? What about the other members of her team? He seemed to have underestimated this superpowered team with a very strange name. Xiaoqing didn't say much. She helped Gu Chuan back to the car. After getting in, Xiaoqing asked Gu Chuan to go to the back seat to absorb the crystals. She sat in the front passenger seat with Little Bun in her arms and continued to study the route. Yin Pingshan and the others had studied the route long ago. They knew which path to take was the least dangerous, which path to take was the shortest, and which path to take was the smoothest. However, Xiaoqing was a cautious person. She wasn't in the state where she could feed herself and her family. She had to keep a high level of vigilance. Chapter 85. Take this trip as an example. It was the safest route, but there was still an accident. Xiaoqing took the map and studied it carefully. If there was another accident, she could quickly find a second way out. She wouldn't be as helpless as she was this time. When they stopped for lunch in the afternoon, everyone's attitude towards Xiaoqing and the others was much better. After all, the strong always won more respect. After the meal, there was nothing much to do. It was not suitable to travel at night, but not many people could fall asleep so early in the morning. Therefore, at this time, it was usually time to chat, play cards, and communicate. Gu Chuan and the others were playing cards. Xiaoqing did not join them. She held Little Bun and chatted with Yin Ruru. As usual, there was an air dye by her side. Since that incident, air dye was particularly clingy. Even when it was free, it liked to sit beside her and look at her. Yin Ruru also had children at home. Unlike Xiaoqing, her husband loved her very much. Moreover, he was an ordinary person. It was not suitable for him to go out and do missions. Therefore, her family's model was that her husband took care of the children, and she went out to work. Naturally, the two mothers had a lot to talk about, especially about raising children. Although they were like chickens and ducks, they talked about different things. For example, Yin Ruru liked to talk about how much her baby ate for a meal, how he got fat again, and how he didn't like to sleep and was very noisy. Every time she came home, he would pester her to tell her stories. Xiaoqing liked to talk about how her Little Bun could eat a lot, but he didn't get fat or grow taller. He didn't like to sleep, but he didn't make trouble. Every night, he would pester her to sleep with him. Yin Ruru began to praise Little Bun, and Xiaoqing began to sigh. She was very annoyed that Little Bun didn't grow up. Gu Panpan, who was closer to them, had already made 3 mistakes. She wanted to laugh as she listened to their conversation. Even though the two of them were talking about similar things, they were still completely different from each other. If Yin Ruru understood Xiaoqing's meaning, she would probably be scared to death. How could a child from a normal family only eat crystals and not grow up? While Xiaoqing and Yin Ruru were chatting happily, Ming Shun was pushed over by Yin Pingshan. Ming Shun staggered and sat beside Xiaoqing, then asked, "What are you talking about? You look very happy." Xiaoqing said calmly, "We're talking about our son." Ming Shun fell silent. He had prepared a lot of things to say and thought about what Xiaoqing might be talking about. He even thought about how to perfectly follow up with the conversation. In the end, he realized that Xiaoqing was talking about children. Firstly, he didn't have children. Secondly, he didn't have any experience in taking care of children. Thirdly, he didn't have much contact with children. He realized that he couldn't get a word in. More importantly, there was an air dye next to them. As soon as Meng Shun got a little closer to Xiaoqing, the air dye would stare at Meng Shun like a dog protecting its food. It would quietly push Meng Shun when there was an opportunity. Meng Shun felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. He couldn't get a word in, so he sat in silence for a long time. In the end, he left pitifully. After he left, Yenruru laughed in a low voice. He's interested in you. The way he looks at you is quite complicated. And the one next to you? Xiaoqing slapped the air dye inside. She rubbed the air dye's head and said, he doesn't know anything. His feelings for me are probably just like how a baby bird feels for its mother. As for Mingshun, Xiaoqing smiled and didn't say anything. She had already determined that Mingshun wanted something from her. That was why he kept getting close to her. He didn't have any personal feelings for her. Xiaoqing had once thought about finding a father for Little Bun. At least, Little Bun could have a complete family and a more complete childhood. Her first thought was Yin Hanqing. Chapter 86. First, they were both soldiers, so they were more harmonious in certain aspects. Second, Yin Hanqing's character was more or less understood after this period of time. He was a trustworthy person. Third, Yin Hanqing would not treat Little Bun badly and would be absolutely loyal to her. In the end, something unspeakable happened between her and Air Dye. Air Dye was never a good match in her heart, not because he was a zombie, but because Air Dye really did not know anything. Now Air Dye's feelings for her might be dependence or affection, but it would not be love, because he did not even have his own consciousness, only the most basic instincts. Air Dye like this could be a friend or a partner, but he was not suitable to be a lover. But fate made fools of people, and in the end, she and Air Dye did the most intimate thing. Not necessarily. Yenruru glanced at Air Dye. She had already classified Air Dye as someone who had a problem with his brain. To put it bluntly, he was an idiot. Yenruru said to Xiaoqing in an experienced tone, although he is stupid, his eyes are especially focused. Have you ever seen that, even if there are many people sitting next to him, there is no one else in his eyes except for you? It can be said that he only has you in his world. I think that the person who can be treated like this by him will be very happy. Xiaoqing was stunned, and then she heard Yenruru say, you should not deny his ability to be a lover because of some of his problems. Maybe you can try to understand and accept. At least in my opinion, he is sincere to you. In fact, it is good for you to be like this with him. At least he can't leave you, and he will not betray you. Xiaoqing forced a smile. You are very experienced. Let's not talk about this. It is quite late now, and it is time to sleep. Let's talk another day. Okay.
Yenruru patted her butt and walked lazily to her tent.
I'll talk to you another day. Xiaoqing carried Little Bun and turned around to see Air Dye sitting behind her, looking at her intently. She couldn't help but think about Yenruru's words. You're the only one in his eyes. You're his entire world. Wasn't this a kind of bone-deep romance? Xiaoqing couldn't accept Air Dye immediately, but Xiaoqing's attitude towards Air Dye had changed a lot. At least, she didn't treat her like a spoiled child anymore. Xiaoqing felt that when Dummy's level slowly increased in the future and his IQ recovered, his memory of his life might slowly awaken. If Dummy could say that he loved her at that time, then she would consider being with him. Even if she accepted Air Dye into her and Little Bun's life, it would be an Air Dye with a healthy mind and intelligence, and not an Air Dye like he was now. Xiaoqing brought Little Bun into the tent, and Air Dye followed. Xiaoqing was about to take off her coat when she saw Air Dye crawl under the blanket. Air Dye noticed Xiaoqing looking at him, so he lifted the blanket and patted it, indicating that he would warm the blanket for Xiaoqing and let Xiaoqing sleep in his arms. Xiaoqing was speechless. Ever since that incident, Dummy's attitude towards Xiaoqing had changed a lot. He looked at Xiaoqing as if he was looking at his own wife. He was especially happy, and in his joy, there was doting, and in his doting, there was also shyness. Air Dye was then kicked out. He persistently tried to crawl into the tent, but was kicked out again and again. Air Dye shamelessly tried to crawl into Xiaoqing's bed no matter what. After failing multiple times, he pitifully changed his target to crawling into the tent. He even hid in a corner so Xiaoqing couldn't kick him. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.